Chapter 861. Qin Yu bowed. Greetings, divine Dr. Yi. This junior was lucky enough to complete his mission. This is what the stronghold master wanted. Light flashed in his hand, and he took out the black stone. Divine, Dr. Yi frowned as his eyes fell on it. Then he composed himself. Very good. Since you have completed your mission, you will naturally obtain a reward. Now come back with me. He put away the black stone and carefully traced it with his fingers. He sighed inwardly. This was truly worthy of being a junior that could compete with the miss. He wasn't someone he could easily deal with. Qin Yu looked up at divine Dr. Ye's back. He could sense that his aura was as deep as an abyss, terrifying to an unimaginable degree. He was like a slumbering great beast. Once he awoke, he could cause the heavens to collapse and the earth to cave in. But now, after experiencing the pursuit of that terrifying existence in the city Lord Mansion, Qin Yu couldn't help but have a thought. Could it be that divine Dr. Yi and the Stronghold Master were the same as that existence in the city Lord Mansion? Although they possessed formidable strength, for some unknown reason, they could only display a tiny portion of that strength. Qin Yu quickly suppressed this thought. He was well aware that even if his guess was correct, it would be easy for such an existence to kill him. After smoothly returning to 9 Nether Peak, Xiao left with divine Dr. Yi. Qin Yu watched them leave. Then he turned and said, "Come with me." Xiang Shui nodded again and again. Okay. It was hard to conceal the awe and caution in her expression. She had fallen into opium's influence for a long time. She had no idea that there was such a terrifying influence hidden in this little fragrant mountain. Of course, it was terrifying. Otherwise, how could it have dared to send people to the City Lord Mansion and cause such a great commotion? Moreover, the incomparably powerful Qin Yu had been so respectful to divine Dr. Yi. Xiang Shui had seen all of this with her own eyes. How could she not know that this seemingly ordinary divine Dr. Yi was actually an extremely terrifying character? Qin Yu sensed her thoughts, but had no intention of explaining. Right now, he didn't know anything about the existence of 9 Nether Peak. But there was one thing he knew. There was absolutely a great karmic connection between the Stronghold Master, divine Dr. Yi, and that terrifying existence in the city, Lord Mansion. Why were they hiding here? There had to be some secret. Now, Qin Yu understood that this world wasn't as terrifying as he had imagined it to be. With his strength, he could be considered a powerhouse. It was just that the level of people he had come into contact with was too high. After returning to his residence and helping Xiang Shui settle down, Qin Yu immediately went to see Shuizheng. It wasn't that he cared too much about this cheap big brother of his, but that the relationship between the two of them was simply too close. If one was unlucky, then the other wouldn't be able to escape either, so it was hard for him not to worry about Shuizheng. The good news was that Shuizheng's condition was still stable. Compared to when he left, there weren't many changes. It seemed that he could still maintain his condition for a considerable period of time. The bad news was that he showed no signs of waking up or improving. He could still take his last breath at any time. Staying for a while, Qin Yu sighed begrudgingly and left. He couldn't do anything about the wounds of an original God Realm expert. The only people that he could come into contact with that might be able to help Shuizheng wake up were the 2 people on the 9th Serene Peak. Qin Yu looked up into the depths of his senses. The tides were undulating like an abyss. Even though he had personally entered it and had even come into close contact with it, he still couldn't help but feel awe from the depths of his heart. It was only after 3 days that Qin Yu received the summons from the Stronghold Master. This was expected. Since he had completed the mission, with the other party status, he should keep his promise and give him some benefits. As for what he wanted, Qin Yu had already decided. Outside the courtyard, Xiao was waiting outside. In just 3 days, her aura had completely recovered. Her handsome face was cold and her figure was like a sword pointing towards the heavens. However, when her eyes fell on Qin Yu, there was a bit more warmth in them. The stronghold master and Old Yi are waiting for you inside. Go in." Qin Yu nodded and pushed open the door. His eyes swept around, and he immediately bowed. "Greetings, stronghold master, divine Dr. Yi." Divine Dr. Yi coughed and said, "Qin Yu, you did very well in sneaking into the city, Lord's mansion. Moreover, you saved Xiao Zhao's life. I already know what happened, so there is no need for me to ask any further questions. The reason I called you here today is to reward you according to your merits." He faintly smiled and said, "Now you can make a request. As long as it is within reason, I will agree." Qin Yu said in a low voice, "The reason this junior was able to survive in Obum's sphere of influence until now is all because of the shelter of 9 Nether Peak. It is only natural for me to do things for the stronghold master, so I shouldn't have any other requests. But my big brother's situation is critical. If possible, you cannot." Divine Dr. Yi interrupted him and waved his hand again and again. Change it, change it. You are far too impolite. You want me to revive that walking corpse with just your little merit? You brat, stop dreaming." Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Indeed, this path wasn't feasible, but it wasn't as if he hadn't obtained anything from this inquiry. For instance, this mysterious and terrifyingly strong divine Dr. Yi should have a way to save Shuozheng. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such a thing. Cough, cough, let me remind you. A young man full of vigor and vitality should have some small pursuits between a man and a woman. You've already seen through the girl, so as long as you open your mouth and mention it, you might succeed. Divine Dr. Yi had a thoughtful expression on his face. He kindly smiled and said, "Qin Yu, what do you think?" Of course it wasn't anything. Qin Yu shook his head. This junior is wholeheartedly focused on cultivation and has no intention of being distracted. I thank Divine Dr. Yi for your good intentions. Since saving my big brother isn't enough, then this junior will be so bold as to change my request. He paused for a moment and then said in a low voice, "May I ask what the black stone I obtained from that Obum was? If it isn't important to the stronghold master, then can you give it to me?" You want that stone?" Divine Dr. Yi raised an eyebrow, a strange expression on his face. Qin Yu nodded. "Yes. Divine Doctor, you wanted to say something more, but the stronghold master suddenly waved his hand. Qin Yu caught it with a paw sound. He looked at the black stone in his palm, a happy expression on his face. "Thank you, stronghold master." Divine Doctor Yi glanced at the stronghold master. "Since you've obtained what you want, then hurry up and leave." "Yes." Qin Yu turned and left. Divine Dr. Yi impatiently said, "Miss, that stone is fake and it has been tampered with. How could you agree?" The stronghold master had a strong and fierce face, but she wore a pink dress. She lightly said, "He chose it himself, so I fulfilled his wish. Isn't it good that everyone is happy?" But Divine Dr. Yi suddenly stopped. He rubbed his chin. "Miss, why do I feel that you are deliberately using this opportunity to send this boy to his death? Could it be that you believe this old man's words in your heart and think that he and you—" The stronghold master coldly sneered. "Old Yi, be careful with your words. There are some things you might say that will bring you bad luck." Divine Doctor Yi dryly laughed several times, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. He had only been joking with the miss just now. With her intelligence and thoughts, how could she do something like that? Then there was only one explanation. It seemed that this boy Qin Yu had entered the eyes of the miss, and she was preparing to take him in as a helper. He hadn't even stepped into the divine realm, but he had already grasped the supernatural ability of speaking laws. He did have the qualifications, and this stone was the test that the miss had given him. Whether or not he could be chosen would depend on his own ability. Grasping the black stone, Qin Yu excitedly left the courtyard. No matter how firm his thoughts were, he still couldn't suppress the smile on his face. He nodded to Xiao Zhao and said, "You're still here." "Humph. I will be here if I want to, and I will leave if I want to. It's none of your business. Xiao Zhao sneered. She glared at Qinyu and then turned to leave. This was inexplicable. Where did she get so angry from? Women were really hard to understand. But right now he was in a good mood, so Qinyu didn't take it to heart. He glanced at the black stone in his hand and quickly walked away. Returning to his residence, Xiang Shui was waiting. Because of Opum's appearance, she had been staying in her room for the past few days. Seeing Qinyu return, she smiled. How is it? Is everything all right? Xiang Shui's role in successfully completing this mission couldn't be ignored. Qinyu gripped the black stone in his hand and suddenly said, "Do you want to restore your human form?" Human form? Human identity. Xiang Shui's eyes widened, excitement on her face. You can help me? As a human woman, if it weren't for the fact that she was in a critical situation and had no other choice, how could she be willing to transform into an ugly Opum? In these past years, Xiang Shui had made many attempts, but in the end they all failed. It was only because of this that she had no choice but to accept her current fate. But now, Qinyu's words undoubtedly gave her hope. I can't do it. Xiang Shui's heart sank. But then Qinyu said, But I should be able to find someone to help you. The Stronghold Master, Divine Dr. Yi, and that terrifying existence in Royal King City had an extremely strange relationship. Qinyu had an intuition that he would have a chance to help them in the future. At that time, he could take advantage of this opportunity to ask them to help Xiang Shui restore her human form. To them, this shouldn't be too difficult. Can you say everything in one go? Xiang Shui let out a long breath. She rolled her eyes at Qinyu and then said, Then let's agree. You can't go back on your word. Qinyu nodded. Don't worry, I will do what I say. He walked towards his room. I will be cultivating for the next few days. If there's nothing important, don't disturb me. Bang. The door closed and Qinyu sat down cross-legged. With a flick of his sleeves, the air began to fluctuate, completely isolating him from the outside world. This was the strength to directly control the rules. Even if one's boundary was much higher than Qinyu's, unless they could directly pierce through the rules and ignore their sealing power, it was impossible to hide from his senses. He lifted his hand, and the black stone appeared in front of him. Qinyu took a deep breath, excitement in his eyes. He had originally only wanted to give it a try, but he never imagined that he would actually obtain it. If he wasn't wrong, then this stone should be an extremely rare primal chaos source stone. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger. A powerful aura erupted, smashing into the black stone. But not a single mark was left on its surface with Qinyu's current realm. His all-out attack was no trifling matter. Yet he couldn't damage it in the least. The hardness of this black stone could be called heaven-defying. But this wasn't the key point. After pointing a finger, Qinyu didn't hesitate at all. He lifted a second finger, then a third, and then a fourth. His fingers moved like the wind, so fast that they left behind afterimages. In several breaths of time, Qinyu had pointed a total of 108 times. As the last finger landed, the silent and unresponsive black stone suddenly changed. Hum! The black stone trembled. Faint traces of blue light gushed out from within, dotted with golden stars. The blue light was beautiful and mysterious. Qinyu's eyes widened and a smile spread across his face. Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! Primal Chaos Source Stone. It really is a Primal Chaos Source Stone. The 108 fingers he used just now was an extremely ancient appraisal technique that could detect Primal Chaos Source Stones. Now he had confirmed that it was true. For him to obtain such a treasure so easily was simply a heaven-defying stroke of luck. It seems that although the Stronghold Master and godly Dr. Yi are powerful, they don't know that this black stone is the legendary Primal Chaos Source Stone. Otherwise, they would never have given it to me. Qinyu suppressed his surging emotions, a burning heat in his eyes. Refine it, I must immediately refine it. The strength of the primal chaos source stone has already been activated. If it weren't for the isolation method I set up, I would have already been discovered. If this sort of precious treasure was discovered by others, it would surely draw in a great deal of trouble. Qin Yu lifted a hand and slashed his finger. The flesh on his palm immediately split open and blood gushed out. But in the blink of an eye, the wound automatically healed. Qin Yu frowned. After tearing open the wound again, he propped it up with his finger, not allowing it to regenerate. Blood constantly flowed out and fell onto the primal chaos source stone. It was like a giant dry sponge, absorbing all of the blood without spilling out. After 2 hours, the black primal chaos source stone surface turned crimson red, looking like a blood-congealed jade. Only then did Qin Yu let go of the wound and allow it to regenerate. However, the speed at which the wound healed was a bit slower. The massive amount of blood he lost caused his blood vitality to be severely damaged. And this was because Qin Yu had the body of an ancient and possessed a sufficiently powerful body. If it were any other cultivator, just this amount of blood wouldn't have been enough to provide him. Even though his complexion paled, Qin Yu didn't pause in his movements. This was because blood refining was only the first step in refining the primal chaos source stone. Next was soul ignition, wrapping the power of the soul around the stone and causing it to boil. Finally, it would turn into terrifying blood flames that would soften the primal chaos source stone into a liquid state. Then came the third step, absorption. And in the entire refining process, the second step was the most difficult. Using the power of the soul to cause one's blood vitality to boil was easy to accomplish, but if one wasn't careful, there was a chance they would be burned by the blood flames, causing great damage to the soul. Qin Yu reached out a hand and carefully summoned the power of his soul. It turned into an invisible, 3-legged furnace that sucked in the blood, refined primal chaos source stone. Tao begets 1, 1 begets 2, 2 begets 3, and 3 begets all things. 3 represented the beginning of multiple extremes. It contained endless changes, and it also represented the most stable method of existence, because when things reached an extreme, they would move in reverse. Thus, after 3, all things would be born. The refining method that Qin Yu chose was left behind by some ancient and mighty existence within the fetal egg jade disc. With his current cultivation, he was just barely able to accomplish this. Within the 3-legged furnace formed from the power of the soul, the blood-red primal chaos source stone spun. The blue aura and golden motes of light on its surface began to tumble even more fiercely. Gradually, signs of melting appeared on the surface of the primal chaos source stone. Then, a massive amount of blue gas wildly erupted and the number of golden motes of light rapidly increased. It was like a spinning nebula with trillions of stars all over it. The primal chaos source stone began to melt. The blue gas and golden motes of light were its true form. Only after it completely melted could it be absorbed by a living being for its own use. Bang! Blood-red flames erupted. But they were restrained by the power of the soul so that they didn't leak outwards. Instead, the invisible 3-legged furnace was clearly outlined. Within the blood-red flames, the primal chaos source stone rapidly melted. A massive amount of chaos energy gushed out, all of it a deep blue color and accompanied by a massive number of golden stars. Luckily, I directly obtained the memories from the fetal egg jade disc. It's like I've refined it countless times. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy. If I wasn't careful, the blood-red flames would have injured my soul and caused a severe backlash. Qin Yu was secretly startled. Although the refining process seemed simple, it actually contained tremendous dangers. An hour later, the final portion of the primal chaos source stone was smelted. Qin Yu suddenly lifted his hands and pressed them down. A crack appeared on the 3-legged furnace. Chaos energy surged out. Before it could dissipate into the world, Qin Yu opened his mouth and fiercely sucked in. Like a dragon drinking water, The chaos energy was pulled into a long line, and all of it flew into Qin Yu's mouth without any waste. At this time, it was like a furnace had ignited within his body. The searing heat scorched his flesh and blood. The intense pain almost made Qin Yu think he would be torn to pieces. Even with his tenacious will, his mind was nearly pierced and his consciousness collapsed. Luckily, this feeling only lasted for a brief period of time. The pain receded like a tide and was replaced by an incomparably comfortable feeling. It was like he was soaking in a hot spring filled with the aura of life. He could clearly feel every inch of his flesh and blood emitting excited cheers. His body rapidly grew stronger, becoming stronger and stronger. After an unknown period of time, Qin Yu suddenly opened his eyes. A sharp light flashed in the darkness, and arcs of electricity seemed to spread through the void. He lifted his hands and clenched his fists. This powerful feeling. Qin Yu smiled. The strength of the primal chaos source stone was truly astonishing. But this wasn't all of his harvests this time. With a thought, faint blue lines appeared on Qin Yu's exposed skin. They wove together, ancient and mysterious, emitting a mystical aura at every moment. After the primal chaos source stone solidified, it became indestructible. The blue lines that appeared on Qin Yu's body were the manifestation of this strength. They possessed an incomparably potent defensive ability, as if Qin Yu were wearing an invisible armor that covered his entire body. His defensive abilities rose dramatically. No, there's something else inside the primal chaos source stone. Qin Yu frowned. He could sense that there was something hidden within his body. It was hidden very deeply. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Yu's ancient race body was formidable, it would have been difficult to sense its existence. What is it? Come out for me. With a loud shout, Qin Yu's two hearts began to beat at the same time. Blood energy surged throughout his body, tumbling about like a tide. It's hidden so deeply that I can't force it out. Humph. Since that's the case, I'll make it vibrate even more intensely. Qin Yu clenched his fists and fiercely looked up. At this moment, the feeling he gave off was that of a great beast roaring towards the heavens. Rumble, rumble. The blood energy within his body began to boil, roaring as it wildly flowed through his body. It was like a surging river, immediately echoing through the room. His body constantly shivered. His flesh and blood bulged up and fell back down. The blue lines condensed on the primal chaos source stone not only had the strength to resist external impacts, but could also suppress the eruption of strength within his body. Qin Yu was startled. Luckily, he had already finished refining and absorbing the primal chaos source stone. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to erupt with blood energy to such a degree. Otherwise, his body wouldn't have been able to withstand the explosion. Now, come out for me. With a loud roar, a blood-red rune slowly condensed between Qin Yu's eyebrows. It was like a tadpole, constantly twisting and wriggling about. Unfortunately, this rune was suppressed by the power of his blood energy and couldn't escape. Grand Monarch City, Lord Mansion. In a training chamber, Sophia was quietly lying on a soft recliner. Suddenly, her eyes flashed open, a dignified look in them. She actually sensed the curse I left in the fake divine stone. Did she personally do it? As she sensed with rapt attention, her complexion changed. No, it isn't expelling the curse, but forcing it to appear in my flesh and blood. Sophia leapt onto the ground, her face filled with surprise and joy. She never imagined that things would develop to this step. This was even better than her best expectations, although she couldn't figure out why that woman would be so stupid to be able to sense the curse and force it to reveal itself. There was no one else besides her that could do this. No matter what, a heaven-sent opportunity was right in front of her. She absolutely could not miss it. She lifted her delicate, white and pink front hooves and slammed them into the ground. The power of rules instantly descended within the training chamber, completely isolating this place from the outside world. Sophia looked up and screamed into the nothingness. Her short and sharp syllables fused into the nothingness. Through some unknown method, her voice was transmitted far into the distance. She was summoning her most powerful cursed soul to descend. She had to defeat that woman no matter the cost. Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. At the same time, his heart shrank. The throbbing in his chest caused his soul to instinctively scream. The aura of the curse! Qin Yu wasn't unfamiliar with this sort of strength, but the curse he felt this time was unprecedentedly terrifying. It was like this blood-red rune was connected to a terrifying world. It was like a great gate. Once it was opened, it would release a terrifying strength that could drag him into an endless abyss. This is bad. Qin Yu cried out. He lifted a hand and ruthlessly brought it down between his eyebrows. His fingertips formed hooks as he prepared to dig into his flesh and take away this rune. But at this time his body froze. It was like the temperature in the air had suddenly dropped by tens of thousands of degrees, freezing everything. Hee ha 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 hee, cute little prey, since I have already arrived. Do you still want to run away? You have no chance. Accept your fate and obediently become food in my stomach. Now that you mention it, I feel even hungrier. Let me have a sniff. Hiss, your soul is pure and powerful. It cannot be any more perfect. As he sucked in a breath, Qin Yu's body tensed. He felt as if his consciousness was being pulled out of his body by an invisible strength. Chapter 862. There was only Qin Yu in the room, but he could clearly feel that there was something else here that he couldn't see. Not only did his back feel cold and damp, but he could even hear the other's suppressed breathing that was filled with hunger and greed. Cursed life form. This was a strange life form that was gradually born from the accumulation of a pure and formidable curse power over the endless years. It didn't have a physical body and possessed a terrifying immunity to physical attacks. The only thing that could restrain and kill it was the power of the soul. And the cursed life form's favorite food was also the soul of a living being. Memories suddenly surged into Qin Yu's mind. His eyes deepened. Since he had been locked onto by the cursed life form, there was no other choice but to kill it. Suddenly, that cold and wet feeling spread out from his back. Like a viper leaving its nest, it wrapped around Qin Yu's body and slithered about. He could clearly feel the cursed life form's movements, but when he looked down, there was nothing there. Even when he reached out to touch it, there was nothing there. It was because of this that the cursed life form possessed a near physical immunity, because in the strictest sense, it didn't exist in the same dimension as a living being. It was similar to folding space. But the cursed life form actually had the ability to cross through the barriers of space to kill. A cold and wet viper drilled into Qin Yu's mouth, nose, ears, and eyes. He screamed out in excitement, "I can feel your fear. This is the most delicious ingredient. Don't worry, I will tear apart your soul bit by bit and savor it." Let alone Qin Yu's current boundary. Even a true divine Tao existence would face a near-death situation once the cursed life form locked onto them and invaded their body. But this didn't mean that Qin Yu didn't have the strength to resist. His eyes were icy cold and faint traces of dark golden light surged within them. Hiss, what a delicious soul! It is simply inconceivable. After I swallow you, I am confident I can break through my shackles and evolve once more. I can't hold it in. I want to eat you. Ah, what is this? Damn it. You want to suppress me? You must be dreaming. No. Impossible. What is this? How can you grasp such strength? I want to leave. I want to leave immediately. Screams rang out. The cursed life form seemed to discover something extremely terrifying and struggled to escape. Deep within Qin Yu's eyes, a dark golden light suddenly erupted. Humph! It's too late to run now. Since you've delivered yourself to me, I won't be polite. Within Qin Yu's soul space, a black altar phantom appeared. Although it was only a thin layer that could be blown away by a gentle breeze, it still emitted an incomparably ancient aura. It was invisible and intangible. The cursed life form that had broken in was now imprisoned within the black altar phantom, gradually revealing its true form. 7 tentacles covered in mucus intertwined with each other, their ends fused into a meatball that looked like a squid. If one were to kill me, then the cursed life form would be marked by the cursed life form. It did not have a mouth, but it could roar loudly. I am the direct descendant of His Excellency the Cursed Eye. I have been blessed since the day I was born. If you dare to kill me, His Excellency the Cursed, I will mark you. At that the cursed life form will be again, the I, that you will the cursed life, the cursed will the be become. If you are you, I, you, 111. That, but you, in. The cuttlefish's eyes widened. You aren't afraid of the cursed life form? Qin Yu's soul was expressionless. If it wants to come, then come. Bang, the black altar shook. Faint traces of black energy rose up, gathering above it and turning into a black skull. Its empty eye sockets flickered with crimson soul flames. A cold and horrifying aura immediately spread out. In the blink of an eye, the entire surface of his soul space was covered in a thin layer of black ice. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. The black ice on the surface of his soul shattered. He stepped forwards and looked at the black skull. He lightly said, "This is the offering. Jejejage, it's been many, many years, and you finally contacted me once more. But your aura right now seems very weak." The black skull moved. It looked down at Qin Yu's soul, the blood red in its eye sockets becoming even deeper. Qin Yu's heart trembled. Beneath the gaze of the black skull, an instinctive fear rose in his heart, as if his thoughts would freeze. He was well aware that this black skull was the projection of some terrifying existence far away. Even a single thought from it contained a terrifying strength. At the very least, swallowing him would be an incomparably simple matter. Qin Yu's complexion didn't change. His voice was icy cold as he lightly said, "Life forms of the material world are different from you. There is a cycle of evolution and samsara. What you feel now might not be true. What is it? Great Master of Black Skeleton, are you prepared to tear up the contract between us?" The black skull was silent. It stared at Qin Yu, as if judging whether his words were true or false. After several breaths of time, it let out a low chuckle. "You and I have signed a transaction contract, so we are close partners. As the great master of Black Skeleton of the Black Skeleton world, I certainly won't do something like tear up the contract. Jajage. Then let us complete this transaction." It lowered its head and looked at the cuttlefish imprisoned in the center of the altar. "Cursed creature, what a good material. Although it's a little weak, it's incomparably pure. Oh, I smell a familiar scent from it. It's the scent of the Eye of Curse." The black skull let out another strange laugh. "You life forms of the material world are naturally weak against the power of curses. Are you sure you want to sacrifice this cursed creature? You should know that the Eye of Curse is an existence that holds grudges. Moreover, if it descends, even I, the great master of Black Skeleton, don't want to have a conflict with such a powerful cursed creature." Qin Yu said coldly, "Life forms of the material world are indeed weak against the power of curses, but we do have the power to resist it. Otherwise, the material world would have long been occupied by cursed creatures. If the Eye of Curse really descends, I think it won't be long before we can make another transaction." "Jajage, I like your decision. This is the mentality that a true powerhouse should have." The master of Black Skeleton laughed. "Then I'll accept your sacrifice." The cuttlefish screamed in fear. No, the inside of the black altar suddenly collapsed. It wasn't Qin Yu's soul space itself, but a dimensional channel that connected directly to an unknown space. Xiao, the struggling cuttlefish, was sucked in. The master of Black Skeleton looked over. Oh, it's really a good taste. Then, my contract partner, what do you want? Qin Yu said, the power of the soul, the purest power of the soul. The master of Black Skeleton chuckled. You are indeed as shrewd as ever. The power of the soul refined by the great master of Black Skeleton is something that everyone needs. Then, my close contract partner, the master of Black Skeleton, will satisfy your request. The skull laughed strangely and suddenly opened its mouth. A burning black flame appeared. Although it was dancing with flames, it didn't emit any heat. Instead, it gave off a warm feeling like water. Qin Yu's soul instinctively gave birth to a great desire. He wanted to swallow down this mass of flame because it was refined from pure soul strength. If this small mass of flame in front of him was refined from the souls of ordinary humans, it would require at least 10 million people to refine. Okay, the transaction is complete. Qin Yu reached out and took the soul flame. The master of Black Skeleton was silent for a moment. He suddenly said, Aren't you using it yourself? My close contract partner. Qin Yu shook his head. This has nothing to do with the great master of Black Skeleton. Gigi, although what you said is right, I feel a strange aura in your soul space. The master of Black Skeleton stared at Qin Yu. If you want to awaken them, I might be able to help. This is free of charge. No need. Qin Yu said coldly. The master of Black Skeleton didn't hide it anymore. He directly said, The great master of Black Skeleton is interested in the little thing in your soul space. If you are willing to trade, I can pay you 10 times the soul power. I refuse the trade. Maybe 20 times can change your mind. Qin Yu was expressionless. Master of Black Skeleton, you should go back. GGG. All right, it seems that you really don't want to trade. But I will keep this suggestion. If you change your mind in the future, you can summon me at any time. The master of Black Skeleton laughed. The black altar trembled slightly and was about to disappear. But at this moment, a black gas suddenly seeped out and went straight for Qin Yu. Humph! With a sneer, Qin Yu raised his hand and clenched it. The black gas suddenly collapsed. At this moment, the aura that erupted from Qin Yu's soul was so powerful that it made people tremble. You crossed through space and time to descend, making me unable to control my own power. To apologize, this soul power contained in this divine sense can be called an extra gift. GGG, I look forward to your next summon. Pa, the altar phantom dissipated, but the black skeleton remained. However, the soul flames burning in its eye sockets had been completely extinguished. The cold expression on Qin Yu's soul suddenly disappeared. He trembled violently. An incomparably weak feeling surged out, causing his consciousness to go black. The powerful soul power that he had unleashed just now was because he had borrowed some kind of secret soul technique from the jade egg to scare away the master of Black Serpent. Otherwise, this cruel and cunning creature from another world might really have broken the contract. The aura of the purple moon, blue sun, and cosmic Seacross bell was actually able to make the master of Black Skeleton probe them. It was clear that he was extremely tempted. After a long time, Qin Yu's weak feeling began to subside. He lifted his hand and sealed the black skeleton away. Then he looked at the quietly burning soul flames. In his weakened state, the desire of his soul was even stronger. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed the urge to absorb them. In order to help him fuse with the ancient's heart and grasp it, the purple moon, blue sun, and cosmic Seacross bell had exhausted their strength and fallen into a deep slumber. Now, this soul power would be used to awaken them. This wasn't just gratitude. Realistically speaking, once the three beauties awakened, his strength would also rise. Chapter 863. The burning black soul flames suddenly divided into three. As if they were being guided by an invisible strength, each of them poured into a different area. Hum, hum, hum. The interior of his soul space trembled. The purple moon, blue sun, and cosmic sea-cross bell appeared, directly absorbing the soul flames. Seeing this, Qin Yu relaxed a little. He smiled. It really was possible. The first to wake up was the cosmic sea-cross bell. It cried out in surprise and joy, "I'm alive again! This is too great!" At this moment, the dim purple moon suddenly emitted a halo of light that flowed on the surface of the moon's shadow. Qin Yu's eyes flashed, and a dignified look appeared in his eyes. As he looked at this halo of light, it seemed as if he had discovered something else. Before he could observe more, blue light erupted. The silent blue sun was restored to its vitality and began to release its own fluctuations of strength. At this time, the light of the purple moon and blue sun wove together, fusing together. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. This is... A dark golden light surged in the depths of his eyes, instantly piercing through the surface and reaching the essential truth. The light of the purple moon and blue sun fused together, forming a strange rule. It was different from the great Tao of the heavens and earth, as if it were artificially created. And creating rules represented an unimaginable level, one that far surpassed the so-called divine realm. Moreover, in Qin Yu's eyes, there seemed to be an even more astonishing secret hidden within this rule. Qin Yu had a clear intuition that he was already standing on the edge of unraveling this secret. As long as he wanted to, he could unravel it at any time. Hesitation flashed in his eyes. Qin Yu already knew that there was a connection between the purple moon and blue sun, and that there were many other secrets hidden within. If this were before, he wouldn't have hesitated at all. He would have directly unraveled this rule and found out the true origins of the purple moon and blue sun. But now, after experiencing the ancient's heart, the purple moon and blue sun had proven themselves with their actions. Qin Yu was willing to believe them. Since they weren't willing to say it on their own initiative, they must have their reasons. Qin Yu shouldn't make a decision without their consent. Suddenly, a fluctuation spread out from his soul. This was the jade embryo egg that had fused into it. In the next moment, the rule in front of Qin Yu seemed to sense something and unsealed itself. Golden specks of light broke down from the laws, and the shadows of the laws quickly blurred. Because these specks of light were part of the laws, they also represented the secrets they contained. As if they were attracted by something, these golden motes of light flew towards Qin Yu. Although they couldn't be seen with the naked eye, they could still sense them as they landed on his body. It felt as if drops of cool autumn rain were sprinkling on the body and then fusing into the flesh and blood. This is... Qin Yu's eyes widened and a look of shock crossed his face. But soon he immersed himself in it and subconsciously closed his eyes. Amidst the light of the purple moon and the blue sun, the man-made rules that appeared contained a complete inheritance. It was left behind by a great figure in ancient times to prevent the inheritance from being severed before he carried out an extremely dangerous task. After a long time, Qin Yu opened his eyes. At this time, a phenomenon appeared. A purple moon hung high in his left eye, and a sun blazed in his right eye. The left eye was the moon, and the right eye was the sun. Shua! Shua! The two figures bowed at the same time, their long dresses outlining their perfect bodies. Servant Linglong Ziue and Servant Sang Nanqing greet the Divine Lord. Their voices were filled with excitement that couldn't be suppressed. Qin Yu took a deep breath. The sun and moon phenomena in his eyes faded away. He glanced at the kneeling purple moon and blue Sunday. Although his memories weren't complete, he knew where they came from. In ancient times, it could even be traced back to the great desolate era. In the endless void, there were trillions of galaxies shining brightly. Among them, there were the great Yin and great Yang stars that revolved around the great desolate era. They controlled the flow of black and dark, controlling the Yin and Yang energies of the world. Above the great Yin and great Yang stars, there were star palaces that stood tall. They possessed ancient inheritances and were powerful enough to look down on all others. However, as the river of time flowed, for some unknown reason. The inheritances of the Great Een and Great Yang palaces underwent a great change. Soon, they vanished without a trace, and all of their descendants vanished from sight. Purple Moon's name was Linglong. She was the master of Great Een Star Palace. Blue Sun's name was Sang Nanqing. She was the master of Great Yang Star Palace. Of course, it was more accurate to say that after the masters of the two palaces perished, after the endless years passed, they were the last remnants of their undying, true spirits. Qin Yu shook his head. "I am not your divine lord." Purple Moon said, "No, there is no way we would mistake your aura for someone else. Even though tens of millions of years have passed, it is still the same." Blue Sun prostrated herself on the ground. "Perhaps you haven't fully recovered your memories, but there is no doubt about your identity. Only the Supreme Divine Lord can directly activate the inheritance rules. Divine Lord, you have finally returned." Qin Yu fell silent. He could faintly guess that the Divine Lord they spoke of had already dissipated from the world, leaving behind only a mark that was fused into the jade embryo egg. It was because of this mark that the inheritance rules had been triggered, causing a misunderstanding between them. Should he continue explaining? When it came to the jade embryo egg, Qin Yu couldn't say anything more. He feared he wouldn't be able to convince them. His thoughts raced several times. Then he said, "Rise." "Yes, Your Excellency, Divine Lord." Purple Moon and Blue Sun respectfully stood to the side. Their eyes occasionally fell on him, filled with awe and excitement. But they were far too weak. Even though they had awoken with the help of their soul flames, their emotions were still wildly fluctuating. The surface of their bodies, Purple Moon and Blue Sun, flashed as if they would extinguish at any moment. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. "Rest first. If there is anything else, we can discuss later." Purple Moon and Blue Sun obediently agreed without any hesitation. It was like everything Qin Yu said represented a supreme will that they couldn't defy. Shua, shua. Their figures flashed, each fusing into their main bodies. In the next moment, the Purple Moon slowly rose up. As if it were being pulled by an invisible force, it fell into the center of Qin Yu's soul space. And at the same time, the Blue Sun rapidly dimmed, like a phantom dissipating. In the next moment, it appeared in his Dantian Sea. Qin Yu was startled. This was because he could clearly feel that as the Purple Moon and Blue Sun appeared, a strange force field suddenly appeared, covering him within. Within this force field, it was like he had jumped out of the world. No, this wasn't the right way to describe it. The more appropriate way to describe it was that he had escaped from the omnipresent net of rules that existed between the heavens and earth. In the boundless universe, as long as one opened their spiritual wisdom, as time passed, they would step onto the road of cultivation on their own initiative, constantly pursuing their own limits. As their cultivation boundary rose, they would control an even more terrifying strength. Their lifespan would rise with it, even reaching a boundary where they could coexist with the sun and moon. But this still wasn't their limit. Or it could be said that there was still an unreachable distance from their limit. This was because they were still within the rules. Even if they lived an eternal life, there would still come a time when their lifespan would run out and they would turn into a pile of rotten bones. Their life of hard cultivation would ultimately be for naught. To truly peak life forms, existences that stood at the peak of the heavens and earth, they were constantly shackled. And what shackled them were the rules of the world that allowed them to possess a terrifying strength. To rely on these rules and also want to break them, this was the painful situation that all peak life forms faced. They would never have imagined that a life form that was so weak in their eyes that could be ignored would actually be able to accomplish what they yearned for in their dreams. To transcend the rules and truly obtain great freedom. To soar through the highest heavens and 10 earths. To no longer be shackled by the rules, Qin Yu was shaken. Although he didn't understand his current state, He felt unprecedentedly relaxed, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Although his strength and boundary hadn't changed from before, Chinyu believed that if he were to attack now, every punch, kick, or any other supernatural power or magic art would rise by more than a level. It was like in this state, he had escaped from some burden that he had to bear. Hum! Hum! Suddenly, this stable force field began to fluctuate. Chinyu was startled. He regained his clarity of mind from this feeling. Then he discovered that the purple moon in his soul space and the blue sun in his Dantian sea were moving at a relatively stable speed. This feeling was like the samsara of the sun rising and moon setting. And at this time, the fluctuations produced by the force field were caused by the sun and moon revolving. But this didn't harm the force field itself. Rather, as it fluctuated, faint traces of the outside world's aura were slowly sucked in. This was a strength that Chinyu had never come into contact with before. It was incomparably weak, and if it weren't for the existence of the force field, he wouldn't have been able to sense it. But soon, Chinyu's eyes widened and his thoughts nearly came to a halt. This was because he discovered that the use of this strength was to strengthen oneself and help one's life level rise. What was this strength in this world? How could such a heaven-defying strength exist? When all living beings in the world cultivated, in essence, it was a way to strengthen oneself and constantly transform. And this sort of process was to promote one's life level. This was because, in this world, there was no such thing as fairness. There were powerful races that were born with tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands or even millions of years of life. They didn't need to cultivate at all. As long as they grew to adulthood, they would possess an inconceivably formidable strength. There were even some special life forms that, to them, life and death were only a process of slumber and awakening. They had never felt the fear and anxiety of death. They stood high and aloof, indifferently watching the millions and millions of worlds around them, watching those lowly and weak life forms that struggled to survive. Chinyu closed his eyes, crazily perceiving this strength. But it was like dust floating in the air. He could sense it through the sunlight, but he couldn't feel it at all. But this strength truly existed. Although his absorption speed was slow, it continued to slowly and steadily fuse into his body, constantly increasing Chinyu's life level. Crazy! He had to be crazy. Chinyu knew better than anyone what this represented. As long as the sun and moon force field continued to attract the strength, then as long as he could live long enough, he would definitely grow into a terrifying existence that would make the entire world tremble. Without any reason, Chinyu suddenly thought of the sun and moon stars that revolved around the great, desolate world countless years ago. Was it possible that they were some incomparably powerful life form that used them to absorb the mysterious strength of the heavens and earth to cultivate? Just as this thought appeared, Chinyu couldn't help but feel his scalp tingle. A faint shivering feeling rose up from the depths of his heart and spread throughout his body. In particular, at this moment, he could clearly feel that as the purple moon and blue sun revolved around them, their auras gradually stabilized and became much stronger than before, although it was only an extremely small portion, so small that it could be ignored, compared to the time it took for them to revolve in the force field. This result was astonishing enough. If this were superimposed over the endless years, what would happen if it were 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years, or 1,000,000 years? Perhaps the small and weak purple moon and blue sun really could grow to the point where they could compare to the sun and moon stars. After a long time, Chinyu took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the tumbling in his heart. He suddenly realized that the inheritance he obtained was far more formidable than he had imagined. The one who left behind this inheritance rule and secretly controlled the sun and moon stars, the ancient almighty being that existed in ancient times, must have reached an inconceivable level of strength. Chapter 864. Chinyu couldn't help but think about what this almighty being had experienced, that he couldn't escape the fate of turning to ash. But soon he restrained these thoughts. This was because no matter what it was far from what he could touch right now. There was still a great disparity between him and that level. As one's cultivation increased, one's lifespan increased, and one's horizons were constantly broadened. The world was like a mountain hidden in the clouds, revealing new surprises every time. It made one maintain a sufficient amount of respect for the world at all times. At this moment, Qin Yu suddenly frowned. He flicked his sleeves, and the door opened automatically. Xiang Shui was startled outside. She quickly said, "Qin Yu, there's a strange old man outside. He's been crouching on a tree for a long time, and he's been looking at our yard. I'm a bit scared." Qin Yu's heart chilled. He nodded to indicate that he understood and calmly walked out. Sure enough, the strange old man crouching on the tree was Miracle Dr. Yi. Although he had been careful enough and had borrowed the power of rules to seal off the aura inside and outside, facing this terrifying Miracle Dr. Yi, Qin Yu still didn't have absolute confidence. Moreover, with his current appearance, it was likely he had already sensed something. His thoughts raced. "Yo, boy, if you don't come out, I won't be able to resist bursting in to see what you're up to." Miracle Dr. Ye's eyes fell on Qin Yu. This person was still the same as before, and there was no change in his senses. But there seemed to be some inexplicable changes. As he thought of this, his eyes became brighter and brighter. They were like shining white knives that could pierce through a person from head to toe. Qin Yu bowed, revealing a look of panic. "Miracle Dr. Yi, there is a problem with the stone that the Stronghold Master gave me. There is a terrifying being sealed inside, and I accidentally let it out." At this moment, he spoke of the appearance of the cursed being. Of course, he had embellished it so that no information would be exposed. Miracle Dr. Ye's complexion changed. "Cursed being." His eyes became sharp and his solemn face became solemn. "Qin Yu, are you sure you didn't make a mistake?" As he spoke, he secretly activated a secret technique to confirm Qin Yu's aura. Sure enough, there was a cursed aura lingering above his soul. Although it was faint, Miracle Dr. Yi frowned and exclaimed, "The cursed eye!" Qin Yu let out an "ah," his face full of anxiety. That's right. It said that it's a direct descendant of the Eye of Curse, and if I kill it, I'll be marked by the Eye of Curse. Miracle Dr. Yi, what's going on? Divine Dr. Ye's figure moved, leaping into the courtyard, and said in a deep voice, "Compared to this old man is more curious about why you're still alive." Although it sounded cruel and heartless, it was the truth. With your current strength, there was no way you could resist the slaughter of a cursed creature. Qin Yu, you must give this old man a reasonable explanation. Qin Yu revealed a trace of hesitation, but as he sensed Miracle Dr. Ye's cold and grim aura, his complexion paled and he quickly said, I'll speak. He paused for a moment. "Many years ago, I accidentally picked up a black bone. Through it, I signed a trade contract with a powerful being called the Master of Black Viper in a distant world." Master of Black Viper! Miracle Dr. Yi thought for a moment, but he didn't seem to get anything out of it. "You're saying that you borrowed the power of the Master of Black Viper to kill this cursed creature today?" Qin Yu nodded repeatedly. "Yes, that's it." "Humph. Qin Yu, you actually dared to lie to this old man. As you said, an existence that could casually kill the cursed creature just by sending a projection through space and time. Its true strength is far beyond your imagination. Why would such an existence sign a trade contract with you? I'm afraid that the moment you established a connection, it would devour you without hesitation." Qin, you thought that this old fellow's guess was right. If he hadn't been prepared, the Master of Black Viper might have really done that. That's right, the Master of Black Viper was indeed very angry back then. He asked me where I came from. That black bone seemed to be very precious, but after he flew into a rage, he didn't kill me. He only left a sentence saying that he could summon his projection and left. Miracle Dr. Ye's eyes flickered. Could it be a passive summon contract? The black bone that Cheney spoke of was a medium for the master of Black Viper to sign a contract with a powerhouse. It was unknown why this boy obtained it. Although this sort of thing was rare, in the eyes of the experienced and knowledgeable miracle Dr. Yi, it was still possible. Of course, more importantly, Chenyu's words perfectly explained everything that he had sensed. For example, the cursed creature, the projection that crossed space and time. From the looks of it, he was very honest and didn't hide anything. That's right, this old fellow had already sensed the fluctuations but didn't reveal anything. Instead, he was waiting for Chenyu to speak first. If Chenyu's words didn't satisfy him, Miracle Doctor, you wouldn't hesitate to kill him on the spot. This matter concerned the young Mrs. Future, and he couldn't allow any hidden dangers to exist. But now, it seemed that Chenyu didn't have any problems. Compared to the masses, he was just a relatively lucky little cultivator. Cursed creature, this is a bit interesting. Miracle Doctor Yi glanced at Chenyu. He knew that Chenyu was hiding something, but everyone had their own secrets. He didn't want to get to the bottom of it. Chen boy, you are a smart person. I hope that you will always be smart. He turned and left. After turning his back, he frowned slightly and revealed a dignified look. Xiang Shui had a worried expression. Chenyu, I'm fine. Chenyu took a deep breath and calmly said. Xiang Shui hesitated. She nodded. Grand Monarch City. In a chamber within the City Lord Mansion, Sophia opened her eyes. She stuffily coughed, and blood flowed out from the corners of her lips. In the next moment, large swathes of blue and purple lines appeared on the surface of her snow-white body, weaving together to form a horrifying ghost face. This ghost face fiercely struggled, as if it wanted to break free from her flesh and blood. In the quiet chamber, the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves filled the air. Curse backlash! Sophia's eyes were filled with anger. She lifted a hoof and pressed it between her eyebrows. A mark instantly appeared, releasing a rainbow-colored light. This light flashed and instantly spread to Sophia's entire body, completely enveloping it. The ghost face angrily roared, but in the end it was suppressed and submerged into her flesh and blood. Who? Sophia gasped for breath. Because of anger and fear, her face was pale. The cursed creature had been killed. Only like this would she be able to withstand such a terrifying backlash. It had to be known that this cursed creature was a life-protecting treasure bestowed upon her by the High Ancestor during her coming-of-age ceremony. It was a direct descendant of the Eye of the Curse and possessed tremendous potential for growth. Now that it had been killed, the Eye of the Curse would never give up. She had used her life mark to barely suppress the eruption of the backlash, but this could only last for a short period of time. Unless she returned as soon as possible and asked the High Ancestor to help, if the backlash erupted once more, her body wouldn't be able to withstand it. Damn it! Sophia clenched her teeth. Everything was originally under her control. She had grasped the perfect opportunity and even had a chance to win in a single strike. But in the blink of an eye, the situation had completely deteriorated. She had been forced into an absolute disadvantage. That hateful woman. Just how did she do this? Sophia was well aware of just how terrifying the cursed creature was. Even in a normal state, it would be difficult for her to contend with it with her level of life, much less in her current state. Could that woman have hidden some other methods? That shouldn't be the case. The information she obtained ahead of time didn't mention this. She mustn't panic. Sophia forced herself to calm down. She thought for a while, and her eyes suddenly lit up. The cursed creature was extremely terrifying. Even if that woman successfully killed it, she definitely wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. In other words, she was currently at her weakest. The longer she delayed, the more disadvantageous the situation would be for her. Moreover, the backlash of the curse was only temporarily suppressed. She originally needed to defeat her opponent in the shortest time possible and obtain victory. She had to change her plan. Sophia's eyes flickered. Cursed creature. The well-built village master was still wearing that pink dress that was tightly wrapped around her body, making her look rather strange. Now that she heard Miracle Dr. Ye's report, she frowned tightly. Her big face, which was covered in muscles, suddenly had a hint of anger. "Master Yi, are you sure?" "Miracle Doctor," Yi said. "I detected the aura of the Eye of the Curse on Qin. Combined with what I sensed earlier, I can confirm that he didn't lie about this." The village master sighed. "As expected, the information that I couldn't confirm before is true. She has a protective, cursed creature on her body." "Miracle Doctor," Yi said, but now it's already dead." This old man's eyes weren't wrong. "That Qin kid is a talent. He can actually kill such a terrifying thing." He paused for a moment before continuing. "With a cursed creature protecting her body, in order to avoid being corroded by the curse, she must sign a contract. The one in the great king city probably isn't feeling well now." His tone was one of gloating. "Master Yi, things aren't that simple." The village master stood up and walked to the window. "As you said, if she suffers the backlash of the curse, would she be willing to sit and wait for death? I'm afraid she'll make a move soon." "Miracle Doctor," Yi sneered. "So what? Could it be that Miss is afraid of her?" "I'm not afraid of her, but our luck this time is too bad. The opponent's identity has an overall advantage. If we fight head-on, it'll be very troublesome for us. I'm afraid our previous preparations won't be needed." Miracle Dr. Yi frowned. "That's true. Miss isn't ready yet, right?" The village master nodded. "She's still not ready, but if the situation is dire, we can barely use it. Now we just have to see what she does." Sophia privately hosted a banquet for the top nobles from the imperial city, the direct bloodline of the Oba family, the third in line of succession, Ola's. The entire mayor's mansion was bustling with activity because of this. Exquisite dishes were constantly being served on the sumptuous and exquisite dining table. In the banquet hall, the mayor and Mr. Ola's were chatting happily. The banquet lasted for a full 6 hours. When it was over, the mayor invited Mr. Ola's into his study to discuss some matters. As the matter was confidential, the many Obom nobles who accompanied the banquet retreated, bowing respectfully before leaving. Not long after, Sophia and Mr. Ola's, who were discussing confidential matters, lay on the bed, their bodies intertwined as they panted. The mayor, whose face was flushed and eyes blurred, seemed to have sensed something. He hugged the person on top of him tightly, moaning even more passionately. Ola's sped up madly, and with a low growl, he completed another round of full power. With a face full of comfort and satisfaction, he lazily slumped onto the soft, delicate body beneath him. Of course, this delicate body was a judgment made from the eyes of the Obom race. It was just that at this moment, Mr. Ola's, who was completely immersed in pleasure, did not notice that the blurriness in the mayor's eyes had dissipated, revealing an icy coldness. She raised her hand, and one of her front hooves shifted rapidly, revealing a woman's perfect palm. Fair, soft, and exquisite, it landed lightly on Ola's body without the slightest hint of anger. Bang! Like a balloon that had burst, bright red blood, mixed with pieces of internal organs, landed on the mayor. Mr. Ola's, whose eyes were wide open, gurgled twice before he finally stopped breathing. Ah, there's an assassin. Chapter 865. Sophia decisively shook off all suspicions about her. Although she had already put on her clothes when the crowd arrived, it was not difficult to guess what had just happened with her flushed face and messy body. Of course, more importantly, Mr. Ola's from the imperial city was now lying naked on the bed, and there was a strange smell in the air. Because of Mr. Ola's high status, even with Sophia's identity, she had gone through a strict inspection. The facts proved that they had really been in close contact, and there was crucial evidence left in her body. Therefore, the Aurora family of the imperial city agreed with Sophia's words about a human assassin after some thought. What's more, there was now a bright and elegant palm print on the back of the dead Mr. Ola's, which was definitely from a human woman. Finally, the Ola's nobles who had rushed over from the imperial city quickly came to an agreement with the various parties of the imperial city. The one who killed Mr. Ola's was the human assassin who had barged into the residence of the city lord and killed Butler Durafi. The residents of the city lord had already begun investigating this matter, and now they had some clues. Although they could not confirm who had ordered the assassin, they could roughly pinpoint his location. Little Fragrant Hill. Little Fragrant Hill was actually not small at all, so strictly speaking, the name was not very appropriate. It was mostly a north-south mountain range that stretched for more than 100,000 miles. There were countless peaks of various sizes, as well as valleys and thousands of wide rivers. It could completely be seen as an independent country. There were billions of creatures living in this country. Other than the various demonic beasts, which were the most numerous, there were also the humans who had fled here to survive in order to avoid the persecution and pursuit of the Opum race. Of course, there were also some Opum villages here, but they had left their homes and fled deep into the mountains, often with extremely tragic pasts. Once they were discovered by the Opum from the outside world, their fates would only be worse than those of the human race. When the malicious intent from the imperial city began to spread, the news spread in Little Fragrant Hill at an alarming speed. A human assassin had killed a noble of the imperial city, and the Opum race had taken revenge. Unless the murder was handed over, they would launch a thunderous bloodbath for revenge. The 9th Serene Peak was located in the depths of the small Fragrant Hill. Before the news came, the fort master had already confirmed it through some unknown channel. Miracle Dr. Yi was silent for a while. Then he suddenly sneered. This Miss of the Bullet family is really willing to do anything in order to win. I've heard before that the Bullet family isn't purely human, but mixed with barbarian blood. I didn't believe it before, but now I'm afraid it's true. Of course, he could tell at a glance who had killed Ola's. The fort master's expression was calm. It's impossible to let the matter rest so easily that a top-notch noble Opum has been killed. Although the 9th Serene Peak is hidden in the depths of Little Fragrant Hill, it will be involved sooner or later. Once I'm discovered, she will gather all her forces to attack the 9th Serene Peak. Miracle Dr. Yi fell silent, his eyebrows furrowed together for several breaths of time before relaxing. Miss, there is no need to worry. With me here, no matter how many people the Opum race sends out, I can make them all stay behind. His tone was calm, but there was a hint of malice in it. Oldie, the fort master, glared at him, a bit of anger in her eyes. Unfortunately, with her current appearance, it was quite nauseating. Strictly speaking, I've already broken the rules by dragging you here. If I'm discovered, it's possible that I'll lose. Miracle Doctor Ye's complexion changed. I almost forgot. I can't be exposed, so what do I do now? He clenched his teeth and angrily said, Now that I think about it, it's all that boy Chinyu's fault. Why did he kill off that cursed life form for no reason? Not only did he cause trouble for himself, but he also forced the Bullet family's girl into a desperate situation. He could only take a risk and risk his life. If he had just a bit more time, with missed preparations, victory would have been easy. The fort master revealed a helpless expression. Oldie, you were the one who recommended Chinyu, okay? She glanced at the awkward expression of the fort master and didn't continue speaking. All right, let's get down to business. Although the current situation is a bit difficult, it doesn't mean that we have no cards to play. The entire array formation hasn't been laid down yet, but if we pay a price, we can just barely use it. I hope that we can force Opum to retreat. The fort master's eyes brightened. Old Yi, don't forget that if there is no accident, time is on our side. As long as we can persist long enough, we might be able to win even without facing him head-on. Old Yi hesitated. Miss words are correct, but once we forcefully activate the array, you will be fixed here and won't be able to take a single step out of 9 Nether Peak. The fort master smiled. If we don't do anything, we will be found sooner or later. We might as well give it a try. Moreover, I have confidence in my ray formation. They won't be able to break through it so easily. At the edge of Little Fragrant Mountain, there was a small human settlement. Flames burned corpses, and the air was filled with the smell of cruelty and cruelty. Now, this settlement had been thoroughly destroyed. All life that they saw had been killed without hesitation. Dark red droplets of blood dripped down the snow-white, ice-cold blade and shattered on the ground. Wearing a helmet and completely covered in black iron armor, Obum sheathed his long saber with an indifferent look in his eyes. Let's continue. As the armor moved, the armor pieces collided and rubbed against each other, producing clicking sounds. The Obums that were scattered in the village to hunt the fish that escaped the net quickly gathered together, forming a black torrent. Like a huge python, they continued advancing into the depths of the forest. Behind a fallen door, two small figures were hugging each other. The boy was slightly older, and he covered the girl's mouth to prevent her from making a sound. However, the scene in front of them was like a tidal wave that struck their hearts and minds. Their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Only when these murderous Obums left did the boy release his hand. The girl in his arms cried out, "Brother, don't speak. Let's leave this place quickly." The boy pushed open the door and turned to look at the collapsed house. His eyes were bloodshot, and tears flowed down uncontrollably. Just now, he had heard his parents' screams before they died. He pulled his sister and kowtowed to the ruins before getting up and leaving quickly. Outside the village, within the black torrent of Obums, an Obum sniffed and sneered. "Captain, 2 humans are still alive. They're leaving." As he spoke, he raised his front hoof and pointed in the direction that the siblings had escaped. Under the helmet, the captain's eyes were cold. He retracted his gaze and said calmly, "Go and kill them." "Yes." The Obum who reported laughed excitedly. He turned around and moved his feet, breaking away from the team and giving chase. The taste of human boys and girls was simply too delicious. If he moved quickly, he would be able to have a good meal. "Brother, there's a black-armored Obum." The younger sister, who was following behind, occasionally turned around and screamed. Her face instantly turned pale. The boy shouted loudly. As his flesh and bones cracked, his body suddenly expanded, and his speed suddenly increased. "Quick, run." Every black-armored Obum was an executioner whose hands were stained with the blood of humans. They were extremely powerful, and they were not people they could fight against. Besides running, there was no other way. But soon, despair appeared in the eyes of the siblings. They were already doing their best, but the distance between them was rapidly shrinking. "Sister, run." The elder brother suddenly threw the girl away. He stopped and turned around. He stared at the black-armored Obum that was howling towards him and let out a bestial roar. "Come on, you monsters!" The black-armored Obum laughed loudly. "A courageous human boy will definitely taste even more delicious. I've decided to leave you behind to eat. Today, none of you can even think of escaping." At this moment, he suddenly felt some changes in his body. Then, the terrified human boy revealed an expression of shock, followed by ecstasy. Oh, what did this boy see? Or is he trying to trick me into turning around? What a childish boy. Does he think that the brave and skilled Obum warrior, Dodora, will be fooled? Puff! There was a dull sound. Or, to be more precise, it was the sound of countless dull sounds overlapping each other. Because it was too short and occurred at the same time, it sounded like a single sound. The black-armored Obum's vision turned black, and his consciousness instantly fell into darkness. Before he died, his last thought was, "What happened to me?" The ground was covered in minced meat. The human boy swallowed his saliva. He looked at the minced meat that had been easily torn apart by the fog and turned into a pool of blood on the ground. A trace of fear appeared in his eyes. He didn't know what the fog was or why it had appeared, but if it wasn't for it, he would probably be dead by now. The The boy bowed towards the fog and didn't say anything. He turned around and chased after his sister. The two of them continued to flee for their lives. However, what the siblings didn't know was that the fog that had suddenly appeared and killed the black-armored Obum wasn't limited to what they saw. For some unknown reason, the entire Little Fragrant Hill was suddenly covered in fog. This fog looked extremely ordinary, but it possessed extremely terrifying abilities. It was like the sharpest blade that could easily tear apart the sturdy armor of the Obum warriors, as well as the powerful bodies that they were so proud of. But apart from that, the fog was harmless. That's right, the fog only targeted the Obums who had barged in. No other living being would trigger its attack. For a time, the Obums who had barged into Little Fragrant Hill and were clamoring to take revenge by slaughtering millions suffered heavy casualties. In the great King City, news of the casualties at the front lines spread. The Aurora family was furious, and everyone trembled under the fury of the top-notch nobles. If they had been doubtful about the search for the culprit in Little Fragrant Hill before, then they were now certain that the culprit was here. This super formation, which was targeted at the Obum race and covered the entire Little Fragrant Hill, spanning over 50,000 kilometers, could only be set up by the human race's top-notch formation experts. Other than assassinating Aurora, they couldn't think of a reason why such a powerful human expert would appear in Little Fragrant Hill. At this moment, no one noticed a flash of joy in the eyes of Sophia, who had a sorrowful expression. "Found you." Sophia had done a detailed investigation on her opponent and possessed extremely complete information. Coincidentally, one of them was related to formations. Indeed, that woman had been secretly setting up a formation during this period of silence. From what they knew, the power of the formation was far from reaching its peak. In other words, she was forcefully activating the formation. In the following period, she would only be an immobile target. As long as they could lock onto her position, they could use the power of the Aurora family to kill her and obtain the final victory. Damned human cultivators! How dare you kill a descendant of the Aurora family's bloodline? I'll make you pay a painful price. Elder Aurora, whose entire body was pure white and represented his noble bloodline, roared in anger. His short and laughable body emitted a frightening aura that made one's heart palpitate. But now, other than being angry, he didn't have much of a choice. This was because the Obum race, which relied on their bloodline to strengthen themselves, really didn't have much of an achievement in the path of formations. The angry roar in the hall gradually subsided. In the silence, the atmosphere gradually became a little awkward. Sophia stood up, her expression sorrowful and her eyes dim. "Mr. Aurora can't die in vain. We must find the culprit and let her die in fear and despair and repentance, so as to comfort Mr. Aurora's spirit." She looked around the hall and finally landed on Elder Aurora. "Because of the innate limitations of our race, it's difficult for us to achieve much in the path of formations. But it's not like we don't have a chance to break the formation in Little Fragrant Hill. Elder, we can use the power of the human race itself." Elder Aurora's eyes lit up. "You mean the fallen humans?" This world was divided into two by the back of the Gazing Mountain, each controlled by the Obum and the human race. Since countless years ago, the two races had waged a long and endless war. Throughout this long period of time, there were always some humans who were subdued and eventually willingly became the minions of the Obum race. They were known as the fallen humans, and they had a high status in the Obum race. They were directly governed by the royal family. It could be said that those who could be absorbed by the royal family and become a member of the fallen humans were all human elites with talent in a certain aspect. Therefore, even though their numbers weren't large, the existence of the fallen humans had dealt a heavy blow to the human race in several wars. Elder Aurora fell into deep thought. Although with the family status they had the right to borrow the fallen humans controlled by the royal family, they had to pay a price for it. Although Aurora was a direct descendant and had a noble status, there were many others in the Aurora family who were of equal status. Paying too much for a dead descendant was not in line with the beliefs of the family. Sophia's eyes were filled with sorrow. She got up from her seat and knelt on the ground, her voice mournful. I fell in love with Mr. Aurora at first sight, and I've already decided to combine with him and give birth to a bloodline. Now that he's been killed, I'm willing to do everything I can to avenge him. Elder, please help me fulfill my wish. Chapter 866. The fog that covered the little fragrant mountain wasn't overwhelming. It was in a flowing state. Back then it was thick, but now it was thin. Sometimes it dissipated, sometimes it gushed out without any pattern. Because of this, it became increasingly difficult to deal with. The black armored army that had charged into the little fragrant mountain tried several times, but all of them ended with heavy losses. They were forced to retreat, gathering in the 12 camps and activating the Blood Fiend. They worked together to resist the invasion of the fog. Although they were suppressed to the point where they couldn't take a single step out, they at least managed to protect themselves and no longer suffered any casualties. If one were to look down from above the 9 heavens, one would notice that 12 enormous blood-red lights were like pools of blood that decorated the continuous mountains. They were dazzling and scarlet, and along with the passage of time, they would ceaselessly shrink and expand as if they were gasping for breath. And they isolated the invasion of the mist. This was the Blood Fiend technique that the black armored army controlled. It was a secret technique that used one's bloodline to constantly refine and condense one's infernal energy through slaughter, finally fusing with one's blood and chi. When released in battle, it could strengthen one's body and suppress and deter the enemy. Now, these Blood Fiend lights were the method they used to temporarily resist the fog. They were like wounded beasts hiding within, licking their wounds. But this peace was destined to not last for too long. The great king city had already sent news that they would soon find a way to break through the array. At that time, they would make all the living beings that lived in the little fragrant mountain pay an unbearable price for the losses they had suffered. The 9 Serene Peak was under martial law. Everyone was ordered to remain in their residences and not to take a single step outside. Xiao held a long sword in her hand and sat cross-legged on a bluestone. In front of her was a small gravel path, the only path that led upwards. And at the end of this path was the residence of the young miss. Xiao didn't know what had happened, but the order that Miracle Dr. Yi had given her was to guard this place and not allow anyone to take a single step outside. Her life had been saved by the young miss. Unless they stepped over her corpse, no one could enter. This silly girl is quite loyal, but if she's already here, her little bit of strength is simply not enough. Miracle Dr. Yi withdrew his gaze from the window. Miss, what's the situation now? The fort master was sitting cross-legged. His body was much taller than a man's, making him look like a sturdy iron tower. He opened his eyes when he heard Meng Chao's words. His eyes, which did not match his appearance, revealed unconcealable fatigue. His voice was slightly hoarse as he said, "Fortunately, the power of the formation is greater than expected. Obum's Black Armor Army is temporarily trapped." "Miracle Doctor," Yi said, "can you force them to retreat?" Fort Master shook his head. "She's willing to pay any price in exchange for borrowing Obum's power. She won't give up so easily. I have a feeling that things won't go smoothly from here on out." Miracle Doctor Ye's face was solemn. He didn't doubt Mrs. Premonition at all. "Then what do we do now?" "Wait." The stronghold master closed his eyes, conserving every ounce of energy he could. "We'll deal with the changes by staying the same. We've already made our move. Now let's see how she breaks it. Elder Yi, perhaps I'll need your help very soon. Please be prepared in advance." Miracle Doctor Yi nodded solemnly. "Rest assured, Mississippi. With me here, I'll definitely ensure your safety." Although he said this, there was a trace of worry in his eyes. With Mrs.'s current state, if she forced herself to hold on for too long, even with his help, it would be hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be any problems. However, the current situation was unavoidable. They could only take one step at a time. 3 days after the Imperial City gave their reply, An obscure and violent spatial fluctuation erupted in the depths of the great king city's city, Lord's Mansion. The fallen humans had finally arrived. They stepped out of the teleportation formation and left the distorted spatial range. 12 figures appeared, each of them wearing a black robe that covered their entire bodies. On top of the pure black robe, there were a large number of interweaving purple lines that seemed to blend in with the black. One had to look carefully to notice them. Many of the Obum nobles standing in the underground hall gasped. Their faces paled, and they couldn't help but retreat. The aura of these fallen humans was so terrifying. The feeling they gave off was that they were monsters wearing a layer of human skin. At any moment, they could tear apart their disguise and open their mouths to devour them. Elder Aurora coldly snorted. His eyes swept over the panic-stricken Obum humans in the hall. He cursed them inwardly for being trash. No matter how terrifying these fallen humans were, they were still slaves controlled by the Obum race. He took a step forward and said, "I am Aurora family Elder Deli." The 12 fallen humans stopped. The one in front was a tall man with shoulders as straight as a mountain. After a moment of silence, he cupped his hands together and said, "Qing Lin greets Elder Deli." His tone was calm and indifferent. "Qing Lin?" Elder Deli's eyes widened. "You are Qing Lin? Ha ha ha. Good. I never thought that I would be able to invite you to help. Then, I'll have to trouble you with Little Fragrant Hill." He clearly knew of this person's reputation. At this moment, his attitude was much better. Qing Lin lightly said, "I have been ordered to come here and will do my best to break through the array formation. Elder, please rest assured." Elder Deli laughed. "Good. Then I will wait for your good news." One day later in Little Fragrant Hill, Qing Lin reached out a hand. His 5 fingers opened and an invisible strength spread outwards. Suddenly, a mass of fog was caught in his hand. Beneath his black robes, his eyes lit up. "Pa!" After several breaths of time, he clenched his fingers into a fist and dispelled the fog in his palm. He whispered in excitement, "High Unity Azure Gold Array. It really is the High Unity Azure Gold Array." With his status, and at this critical moment, the events occurring in Little Fragrant Hill shouldn't have alarmed him to take action. But after receiving a detailed report from the Aurora family, Qing Lin had some guesses. Thus, he decided to come here. Now, his guess was indeed correct. The terrifying array formation that covered the entire Little Fragrant Hill and spanned 100,000 miles was the legendary High Unity Azure Gold. This array formation focused on slaughter and drew in the strength of the world for its own use. It could change the rules of the world on a large scale and was famous for its prestige in the field of array formations. If he could capture the person who laid down this array formation and obtain the method to comprehend it, then perhaps he would soon be able to break through his current bottleneck. To climb the road of cultivation with forbidden arrays as the path was simply far too difficult. Without any experience as a reference, it wasn't easy for him to reach where he was today. He absolutely couldn't miss out on this opportunity. Behind him, a fallen human asked, "Qing Lin, how is it?" Qing Lin said, "I have confidence I can break through the array formation, but it will take some time. I'll have to trouble you with my safety." The fallen human chuckled. "Break through the array formation with all your strength. Leave everything else to me." His tone was filled with confidence. As the other 10 fallen humans spoke, they all respectfully lowered their heads, not daring to interrupt. Even the Aurora family and the nobles of Great King City were kept in the dark. Amongst the fallen humans that had arrived at Little Fragrant Hill, besides Qing Lin, there was another formidable existence. Qing Lin didn't speak much. He had already paid the price in advance for this person to follow him. He directly said, "I will immediately begin to break it." His eyes swept around, black light surging in the depths of his pupils. If one were to magnify this light countless times, they would discover that it was actually a compass formed from countless tiny runes. At this time, the 2 black compasses were slowly spinning. Although they didn't seem fast, The black runes that formed them were already revolving at full speed. Qing Lin had used forbidden arrays as his foundation to climb up the great Tao. Now he was displaying a formidable supernatural ability that could break through all sorts of forbidden arrays. For a full 2 hours, Qing Lin didn't move at all. Then he suddenly opened his eyes. His figure flickered, and he appeared 1,000 feet away. Then he stood still. This pause lasted for another 2 hours. For the next 3 days, Qing Lin repeated his actions. Each time he would appear at a random location, and the longest he stayed at one location was 12 hours. Although this seemed like a complete waste of time, it didn't arouse any dissatisfaction. The 11 fallen humans remained silent, guarding him from start to finish. Any sign of trouble from the outside would cause them to mercilessly attack him. Finally, at this moment, Qing Lin moved. He stepped forwards and appeared beside a large stone. This stone was extremely ordinary. Most of it was buried deep underground, and its surface was covered with traces of erosion. It was clear that it had been standing here for a long time. The black light in Qing Lin's eyes brightened, and the 2 compasses spun faster. He slowly reached out and pressed his fingers against the stone. Quietly, the stone trembled and then turned into powder that fell to the ground. Between the heavens and earth, strong winds rose up. For a radius of 10,000 feet, all of the fog that filled the air instantly dissipated. 9 Nether Peak. The Stronghold Master's eyes flashed open. She seemed to feel something. Her gaze crossed through the barriers of space and fell into the distance. Miracle Dr. Ye's expression froze. "Miss." The Stronghold Master sighed. "As I thought, things aren't as simple as they seem. A node within the Tai Azure Gold Array has already been broken." She reached out a hand. Without making any movements, light began to shine from her palm. Then, within this light, the process of Qing Lin breaking through the array formation appeared. However, Qing Lin was now represented by a black dot. Finally, as the black dot trembled, all of the light dissipated. Miracle Dr. Yi frowned. He slowly said, "What fast speed?" "It is indeed fast." The Stronghold Master let out a breath. "That woman from the Bullet family has found a very strong helper." Although the Tai Azure Gold Array was powerful, when it came to a specific location, a master skilled in array formations might be able to break through it if they spent a great deal of effort. But the speed at which it was broken represented a completely different meaning. If it took 10 days to half a month to break through a node, then even if the destruction was allowed to continue, it would only be able to affect an area of 100 miles. But this person only used 3 days. This wasn't just several times faster, but also represented a qualitative increase in strength. If they couldn't stop this person and allowed him to freely walk through the array, then it wouldn't be long before he was able to lock onto the true eye. At that time, there would be a great deal of trouble. The Stronghold Master's thoughts raced. With the bloodline talent of the Obum race, it is impossible for them to give birth to an extraordinary character in array formations. If I'm not wrong, then the one breaking through the array formation should be an array formation master from that group of fallen humans. Miracle Dr. Ye's eyes brightened. "Miss is right. If it is a fallen human, then perhaps we can think of a way to borrow the strength of the other side of the mountain. That might work, but we don't have that much time. Miss, rest assured that I will secretly use some methods to make them suffer." The Stronghold Master shook her head. "No. Old Yi staying here to help me is already the greatest risk we can take. We cannot attempt to interfere. Otherwise, once we are discovered, we will lose the qualifications to compete." She looked up. "Perhaps we can have him give it a try now." Miracle Dr. Yi frowned. "Miss, are you speaking of Chinyu? Although that boy is extraordinary, according to what we know, fallen humans have always had countless masters. I fear he will only be sending himself to his death in vain." The Stronghold Master shook his head. "Old E, I don't think he will die so easily, of course, if my senses are wrong. Then if he dies, then so be it. At least we can buy some time. This, and if he isn't willing to help. Chapter 8:67. A fog suddenly rose up in the mountains. No one knew where this fog came from, but everyone knew that this fog was evil and terrifying. Any living being in the mountains that had a consciousness of their own began to carefully hide themselves, afraid that they would provoke disaster upon themselves. A stone lizard that had just begun to gain spiritual wisdom was hiding in a crack in a rock. It had already been hiding here for over a dozen days, and its stomach was burning with hunger, making it unable to suppress its wild urges. It needed food. The sound of footsteps suddenly rang out, and a figure approached from within the rippling mist. The stone lizard could no longer endure the smell of food, and with a push of its hind legs, its entire body scuttled out. It was as fast as an arrow released from a bow, and with a series of afterimages it pounced over. Pah! There was an explosive sound in the air. Qin Yu drew back his hand without expression. The corpse of a lizard-like monster beast that was covered in gray scales fell to the ground. After cultivating the flesh transformation art, Qin Yu had used the membrane that concealed his aura and the body of an ancient to research a powerful aura-restraining technique. Thinking about it, in the eyes of this stupid, dead little monster beast, he was a moving, delicious meal. This was why it couldn't wait to pounce on him. Humph! A weak thing that couldn't recognize its own status. Death was its punishment. He turned his head to look at the faintly discernible 9 nether peak in the fog. Qin Yu was silent for a moment, a bitter smile on his lips. In the eyes of those two, perhaps he was as weak as this stone lizard. Luckily, Qin Yu was able to recognize himself, so he was still alive. Not long ago, the gloomy-faced miracle doctor, Yi had found Qin Yu and offered him a deal. Qin Yu would go down the mountain and interfere with the fallen humans, preventing them from breaking the Great Array. In return, he would maintain Xue Zheng's life and ensure that he could live on. Of course, this was only a more elegant way of putting it. To put it simply, if he didn't agree, this old man would immediately kill him and send you 2 brothers to reunite in the underworld. Qin Yu readily agreed. He also made a small request. If he could complete the deal, he would ask Miracle Dr. Yi to remove the solidified flesh transformation art from Xiang Shue's body. This was Qin Yu's promise to Xiang Shue. If he could come back alive, then everyone would be happy. If he couldn't come back, then he wouldn't go back on his word even if he risked his life, and Xiang Shue wouldn't be dissatisfied. Miracle Dr. Yi nodded and told him to go down the mountain. This was why Qin Yu had appeared here. This was a world where strength reigned supreme. Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to sigh over how cruel and realistic it was. He took a deep breath and suppressed the fluctuations in his heart. Then he turned and stepped into the fog, soon vanishing from sight. 9 Serene Peak, the small courtyard where the chieftain resided. At the round table under the tree, Miracle Doctor Yi took a sip of tea and looked away from the foot of the mountain. He could sense that Qin Yu had already left with the seemingly impossible mission of obstructing the fallen humans. But why did the young lady think it was possible for him to do it? Miracle Doctor Yi had watched Miss grow up and knew her temperament like the back of his hand. All these years, every step she took was under his control. When it came to her future, the Miss placed an incomparably high value on it. She wouldn't take any risks, so, since she chose Qin Yu, she must have her own reasons. After thinking for a long time without any results, Miracle Doctor Yi laughed at himself. If Miss could guess it so easily, she wouldn't have the status she had today. She originally thought that she valued Qin Yu a great deal, but now it seemed that she valued him far less than the Miss valued him. She only hoped that this boy wouldn't disappoint the young Miss's expectations of him. If he could really make a great contribution, he would definitely have a path to the heavens in the future. Qin Yu didn't know what the path to the heavens was, but even if he did, he wouldn't be in the mood to think about it or be excited. He was well aware of the perilous situation he was facing. In order to prevent Qin Yu from underestimating his enemies and pointlessly throwing away his life, Miracle Dr. Yi had told him everything before he left 9 Nether Peak. So he now knew just how terrifying the fallen humans were. And what he needed to do was to become enemies with this group of terrifying people. This was no different from running on the edge of a knife. If he wasn't careful, he would fall down and have 7 or 8 holes poke through his body. But even so, he still had to do it. Qin Yu rubbed his face. He had encountered many dangers in these past years, so he might be able to survive this one. He lifted a hand and light flashed in his palm. A rune appeared on his flesh and blood, immediately projecting an image. This image was a foot long and looked like a mass of flowing turbid water. Although it seemed ordinary, the truth was that it was the flow diagram of the entire high unity blue-gold array. He could directly find a missing blank space within the array formation. The fallen humans were in this blank space. After determining his position, Qin Yu clenched his fist, and the image dissipated. His feet moved, and he held away. Although he knew that the fallen humans were terrifying, he still needed to see them with his own eyes so that he could make a plan. This was his first contact with them. He hoped that these people wouldn't give him too much of a pleasant surprise. The entire village had been completely destroyed, but the siblings Zhou Hu and Zhou Hui had luckily escaped calamity. At this time, they were lying behind a large tree, their faces filled with surprise as they looked in the distance at several faintly discernible figures in the fog. Humans! They were humans! Thanks to the power of the high unity blue-gold array, all of the fierce monster beasts in Little Fragrance Mountain had vanished without a trace. Otherwise, these 2 charming and delicious little fellows wouldn't have survived until now. They would have already become food in their stomachs. Trembling with fear and dread, the 2 siblings wandered around the mountain until today. At this time, they were so excited that they nearly cried. Although they were only a group of strangers, in their eyes they were like family. Qing Lin opened his eyes. He stepped forwards and suddenly appeared in front of the large tree. He lifted a hand and pressed it forwards. Like the boulders, the thick ancient trees that had taken root here directly turned into powder. A gust of wind blew past, sweeping away the powder and dispersing the fog in the air. Hiding behind the tree, the Zhou siblings' eyes widened. They looked at the black-robed figure in front of them. The strength this person had inadvertently revealed far surpassed their imaginations. Zhou, who subconsciously gulped. He pulled his little sister and hurriedly bowed. "Greetings, Senior." Qing Lin's eyes were indifferent. As he looked at the 2 of them, it was no different from looking at 2 stones. Zhou, whose heart trembled, he forced himself to remain calm. "Senior, the black-armored Obum has intruded into Little Fragrance Mountain. They are extremely cruel and savage and kill anyone they see. Senior, you must be careful. If there is nothing else, we siblings will bid our farewells. Our family elders are waiting for us to return." As he spoke, he pulled Zhou Hui and turned to leave. But just as he took a step back, the air suddenly became thick and viscous like a swamp wrapping around them. What a vigilant boy. Unfortunately, your words are meaningless to us. 11 fallen humans walked over. The leader of the group chuckled. His eyes beneath the black robe fell on the Zhou siblings, a burning heat in them. Qing Lin frowned. Then he calmed down. "You can relax, but not here." The fallen human who spoke fell silent. He seemed a bit unhappy. After several breaths of time, he coldly sneered, "Of course, you are the employer, so you have the final say. Then, I will leave for a moment. Be careful and protect Mr. Qing Lin. There cannot be the slightest mistake." "Yes, Lord Dongdo." The 10 fallen humans bowed. Dongdo lifted his hand and grasped. Zhou Hu and Zhou Hui involuntarily flew towards him. He licked his lips and with a strange laugh shot into the skies, disappearing with the 2 of them. Qing Lin said, "I will be meditating here. All of you, disperse and don't disturb me." He walked to the giant pit that was left behind after the tree disappeared. He jumped in and sat down cross-legged. The 10 fallen humans looked at each other and then silently retreated, disappearing into the fog. After approaching the empty point of the primordial azure gold array, Chinyu didn't dare to hurry any further. He restrained his aura and shuttled through the fog like a shadow. According to what he had just obtained from the diagram behind the runes, the other party had broken through another array formation node not too long ago. According to Divine Dr. Yi, 1 or 2 nodes wouldn't have too much of an effect on the operation of the array formation. But once there were too many, it would cause the array formation to slow down. At that time, the other party might be able to lock onto the eye of the array through calculations and cause fundamental damage to the entire array formation. What Chinyu needed to do was to protect every array formation node as much as possible and delay the other party from destroying the array formation. Looking up, Chinyu revealed a dignified expression. The node he had just broken through was less than 100 miles away. It could be said to be within reach. What's that sound? Chinyu frowned. He tilted his head and listened for a moment. Then his complexion became strange. After a moment of hesitation, he flew straight towards the source. Ha 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 ha. Scream! Scream! The louder you scream, the more miserable you are, the happier I will be. Dong Do took off his black robe, revealing his strong and scarred body. Due to his excitement, every scar on his body bulged with blood, making him look like a broken terracotta statue that had been pasted back together. He looked strange, ugly, and hideous. On the rough ground, a weak body covered in bruises was now tightly curled up. Even though she had already fallen unconscious, her face, which was filled with fear, despair, and pain, was still twitching and twisting. Zhou, whose eyes popped open and blood flowed down from the corners of his eyes. His lips were nearly bitten off, and his body twitched like a madman. But his entire body was imprisoned and he couldn't break free. He could only watch helplessly on as his little sister was crazily ravaged and injured to the point where she nearly died. He was on the verge of collapse, and there was only one thought in his mind: kill him, kill him. Humph! Dong Do coldly snorted. Such a weak little woman wouldn't be able to withstand his conquest. If this continued, he feared she would die, and that would be pointless. He lifted a hand, and a strength appeared out of thin air. It poured into Zhou Hui's body, forcefully awakening her from her unconscious state of self-preservation. Little girl, it's time for you to be a spectator. My tastes are heavy, and I don't care much about men and women. Open your eyes wide and enjoy. Remember, do not close your eyes. Every time you close your eyes, I will break one of his bones. I have always been reliable, so don't blame me for not reminding you. Dong Do cackled and then turned toward Zhou Hu. Big brother. The extremely weak Zhou Hui didn't even have time to feel her own pain and despair. She desperately cried out. But in truth, she knew that today the two of them were doomed to die. No one could save them. But why? They were all humans, under the cruel rule of Obum. Shouldn't we unite against foreign enemies? Ever since they were young, this was what their parents had taught them. Now, the cold and cruel reality had taught the two of them an incomparably cruel lesson. And the price of this lesson was not only their dignity and bodies, but also their lives. Tears fell down her cheeks. Zhou Hui watched as Dong Do grabbed her big brother and tore off his clothes. She let out an excited roar like a wild beast. No, she screamed in despair. Bang. Chapter 868. By the time Chinyu arrived outside the cave, Dong Do had already finished his attack. He swept his eyes over the black robes on the ground and confirmed his identity. Fallen human. His thoughts raced. The moment that Dong Do rushed towards Zhou Hu, Chinyu attacked without hesitation. This wasn't just to save someone, but because this was an excellent opportunity. If he killed a fallen human, not only would he weaken their strength, but if he could cause them to chase after him in anger, he could prevent them from breaking the array formation. You are courting death. Dong Do was enraged by this sudden attack. His eyes turned red, but he only had time to roar out before he was interrupted. Qin Yu's voice was deep and low. Ice seal. Hum. Invisible fluctuations of rules erupted between the heavens and earth, instantly changing everything. Law with a single word. It was the decree of the heavens and earth. On the surface of Dong Do's naked body, a translucent layer of ice rapidly appeared. It glowed with a faint blue light, imprisoning him within. But soon, with loud cracking sounds, cracks began to appear on the surface of the ice. With a loud bang, it shattered. With Qin Yu's current cultivation, the power of the law with a word was extremely limited. It could only trap him for a short period of time. But to Qin Yu, this was more than enough. He had never thought of using the law with a word to heavily wound his opponent. He punched forwards. White flames burned on the surface of his fist, dignified, solemn, and noble. Within these flames, one could faintly make out the phantom of a towering mountain. This was Mount Paradise, a mountain condensed from the Tao monarch's great Tao. It was an existence that existed between illusion and reality, representing a strike of the great Tao. It could be said that this was Qin Yu's version of the great Tao eternal prosperity. Bang! His fist smashed into Dong Do's chest. His flesh and blood were burned away by the holy light, revealing white bones. Then these bones melted away at a visible speed. Ah! Dong Do cried out miserably. This was because, at this moment, it wasn't just his mortal body that was injured, but his soul was being incinerated. He lifted a hand. The flesh and blood between his fingers broke apart and long claws grew out. These claws shined with an icy cold metallic luster as they hurtled towards Qin Yu. Space was directly torn apart, forming several cracks. From this, one could see just how terrifying this claw was. Qin Yu shouted out loud, "5 elements samsara!" Bang! White, black, blue, red, and yellow lights instantly erupted, weaving together into a vortex that blocked in front of Qin Yu. Puff! The sharp claws entered the vortex and directly tore it apart. However, now that the 5-colored divine light erupted, releasing a powerful restraining power, it forcefully suppressed it. Qin Yu stepped forwards. His figure passed through the vortex. He lifted a finger and touched the point between Dong Do's eyebrows. Jian Song. Vast expanse, blue sea, blue spirit, and blue sky were the 4 fingers of blue. Only by successfully comprehending and cultivating these 4 fingers could one obtain a true divine ability. This was Qin Yu's finger. Borrowing the power of the jade wall embryo egg, he condensed the 5 elements reincarnation cycle and even succeeded in cultivating the 1 finger of Diansong. It could be said that in today's sudden attack to kill the fallen humans in the eastern capital, in this brief exchange of moves, Qin Yu had used his full strength and erupted with his greatest strength. And this finger was the strongest killing method that Qin Yu could release right now. Puff! With a muffled sound, Dong Do's body suddenly stiffened. A round hole appeared between his eyebrows, piercing through his skull. Red and white matter splashed outwards. His wide eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. But at this time a strange scene occurred. The corpse of Dong Do that had been killed shattered with a loud crack. Like a shadow, it vanished from sight. In the next moment, hundreds of feet away, space twisted. Flesh and blood appeared out of thin air, wildly growing. Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He didn't have time to think about what had happened. With a loud shout, he thrust his hand forwards. Bang! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. But as he pressed down, the dreadful strength stirred up was directly swallowed up by the distorted space. It didn't affect anything inside at all. And at this time, the wildly growing flesh and blood had turned into a new Dong Do's aura was incomparably weak. As he stared at Qin Yu with hatred in his eyes, he roared out, "Realm of disorientation!" Without giving Qin Yu time to respond, the space around him opened up, turning into a giant black mouth that swallowed him up. A terrifying, tearing strength came from all around him. Even with the intensity of Qin Yu's mortal body, he still found it hard to withstand. He could clearly hear the painful groans of his flesh and blood and bones. "Ha!" Qin Yu roared out loud. The two hearts in his chest wildly beat, pushing the power of his blood vitality to erupt. His skin turned red as he resisted the tearing strength. When he opened his eyes, all he could see was tumbling and boundless. It was like he had been thrown into a raging underground river and was being wrapped up by it. Qin Yu stepped forwards and shot into the skies, but a moment later his complexion changed. With his speed, let alone being wrapped up by a river, even if he were in the deep sea, he would have already broken through the surface. But now he was still being battered by the turbulent currents, and the tearing strength around him hadn't weakened at all. Qin Yu clenched his teeth. He turned and rushed in another direction. An hour later, Qin Yu came to a stop. His face was dark and gloomy. He had already tried to rush in different directions, but he still hadn't been able to escape. Although Qin Yu could temporarily resist the tearing strength around him, if this continued for a long time, then no matter how strong he was, he would still be torn to pieces. He couldn't panic. Qin Yu took a deep breath. His eyes flashed. He suddenly thought back to the roar that came from Dong Du's mouth before he was sucked into this place. Realm of disorientation. Could it be that this place didn't truly exist, but was similar to an illusory world? If it were before, with Qin Yu's level, he wouldn't have been able to come into contact with this information that only those at the peak of the world could grasp. But the existence of the jade egg allowed him to obtain information that far surpassed his limits. Among these was the content of an illusory world. If this was really the case, deep within Qin Yu's eyes, a dark golden light suddenly surged. His entire body seemed to become much more mysterious and dignified. His eyes slowly swept around. After several breaths of time, Qin Yu revealed a happy expression. It really is an illusory world. In this state, the realm of disorientation in Qin Yu's eyes had pierced through the surface, revealing the essence of a ring. And Qin Yu was currently within this ring. If he couldn't break through this ring, he would be trapped here forever. Once he exhausted all his strength, he would be torn to pieces. From what Qin Yu could sense, this ring was incomparably hard, as if it were supported by some terrifying strength. With his current strength, even if he saw the existence of this ring, he still wouldn't be able to damage it. But luckily, in the ancient past, this ring seemed to have withstood an extremely terrifying collision of strength, causing it to rupture from the inside, creating a massive crack. This was his only chance of survival. Shua! Qin Yu held forwards. Although he seemed aimless, he was rapidly approaching the crack. And during this process, he constantly adjusted his direction. This was because, as time passed, the ring itself was also rotating. It could be said that if it weren't for Qin Yu constantly locking onto the location of the crack, the chances of him finding the crack were nearly negligible. He had arrived. This was the place. Qin Yu stopped. Without hesitation, he lifted a hand and punched out. Dong! The empty void in front of him suddenly emitted a shaking sound. It was like a great drum being struck. In front of Qin Yu, the crack suddenly grew larger. He could faintly feel the aura of the outside world. As he thought, this crack could connect to the outside world. Bang! Bang! Qin Yu punched out again and again, each fist striking the same place. After a long period of time, the surface of the ring began to repair itself. If it was given enough time, perhaps in 100,000 or even 1,000,000 years, the ring would be restored to its original state. But now, under Qin Yu's continuous bombardment, the surface began to crack apart and fall off. The aura of the outside world became increasingly clear, and Qin Yu's attacks became even faster. Finally, as his last punch fell, Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He took a step forwards and vanished from sight. In the cave, Dong Do gasped for breath, sweat dripping down his body. His eyes were filled with anger and alarm, but there was also a bit of joy. He didn't know where Qin Yu had come from. Although his aura wasn't too strong, he actually possessed so many terrifying methods. If it weren't for him possessing the supreme rebirth treasure, he would have died just now. Thinking of this, Dong Do felt his heart ache. It wasn't just because he only had one last chance to use the treasure, but also because Qin Yu had been swallowed into the land of lost. This person definitely had many secrets hidden on his body. If he could suppress and plunder him, he would surely obtain an astonishing harvest. But now, all of this was no longer possible. After barely restoring a bit of his strength, Dong Do flicked his sleeves, and an array disc howled out, isolating the aura within the cave. He needed some time to restore his strength. In his current state, it was best if he wasn't found by others. Otherwise, there was a high chance of an accident occurring. This was a normal thought process, and also in line with the caution that a powerhouse should have after becoming a powerhouse in the cruel cultivation world. But Dong Do never imagined that it was because of this that he had lost his only hope of survival. The space in front of him suddenly split open. Dong Do's eyes widened. As he saw Qin Yu rush out, his heart nearly stopped beating. He subconsciously roared out, "Impossible!" He was well aware of how terrifying the land of lost was. Only after dying once and being reborn could one borrow the strength of a treasure to open it. Once one was swallowed, even a powerhouse of the divine, Tao, would find it impossible to escape. This was something he had verified the first time he used it. But what did he see now? Qin Yu had escaped, and it had only been several breaths of time. It was as if he had just entered and then turned around and walked out. Qin Yu's eyes immediately locked onto the panic-stricken Dong Do. He immediately reacted. The flow of time in the land of lost was different from the flow of time outside. Thus, even if he had been delayed inside for a long time, only a short amount of time had passed outside. "Don't kill me!" Bang. Qin Yu's voice came to an abrupt stop. His eyes locked onto Dong Do's corpse. This time he couldn't be reborn. After twitching several times, he died. This time he was truly dead. Qin Yu relaxed. It seemed that Dong Do's method of resurrection couldn't be used continuously. Thinking about it, this should be the case. Otherwise, it would be far too heaven-defying. His figure flickered, and he arrived at Dong Do's side. Because Dong Do was naked, Qin Yu soon found what he was looking for. A black ring was calmly placed on Dong Do's finger. Its surface flowed with a strange and monstrous light. After carefully sensing it, Qin Yu didn't find anything wrong. He took the ring, and a message directly entered his mind. He closed his eyes for several breaths of time before opening them, a look of pleasant surprise on his face. He didn't think he would have an unexpected harvest. Ring of Rebirth, 1 use remaining. It is limited to those under the original God realm. It can be used immediately after death. In addition, each time he was reborn, he could borrow the power of the ring to temporarily open the lost realm. He could pull the enemy inside to prevent the rebirth from failing. Everything that Qin Yu had experienced when Dong Do had been resurrected proved that this was absolutely true. There wasn't the slightest bit of falsehood. The source of rebirth was an ability that only someone at the original God realm had the qualifications to use a massive amount of resources to arrange. But this wasn't the key point. The key point was that Qin Yu was countless miles away from the original God realm, yet he could still use it. Just this point alone showed how precious the Ring of Rebirth was. But this wasn't all that Dong Do had contributed. His corpse lay on the ground, dark red blood trickling down. Qin Yu seemed to sense something. He furrowed his brows in surprise. In the next moment, he flicked his sleeves, and a buzzing sound filled his ears. A large number of purple-back blue-wing ants appeared. Their compound eyes locked onto Dong Do's corpse, a burning light in their eyes. Without needing to urge them, they swarmed over him. In several blinks of an eye, the corpse and bloodstains on the ground vanished, without a trace. After eating their fill, the purple-back blue-wing ants fell into a deep slumber. They wrapped their wings around themselves, constantly flashing with light as they began to condense into cocoons. They were about to evolve. Qin Yu was pleasantly surprised. He had obtained the monster-raising mystic art a long time ago, but all sorts of events had occurred afterwards, delaying the matter of raising the purple-back blue-wing ants. Now, after swallowing the flesh and blood of Dongdo, they had reached a bottleneck in their evolution. Once they awakened, they would have the qualifications to summon the ancestral monster fragment. At that time, the purple-back blue-wing ant strength would undergo a qualitative increase. Thinking back to when Dongdo had counterattacked, Qin Yu had a thoughtful look on his face. It seemed that he only had the appearance of a human, and his bloodline had long since become modeled. However, he didn't know what sort of cultivation method this person cultivated that his body could absorb and refine so much monster beast blood. But these were all minor details. Qin Yu suppressed his thoughts and put away the purple-back blue-wing ants. Then he solemnly placed the Ring of Rebirth in his hand. This was something that could save his life in a critical moment, so there was no reason for him to not use it. He turned around and saw Zhou, whose eyes widened as he looked at the place where Dongdo had been swallowed. His enemy had been killed and turned into food for the ants. His enmity had been instantly avenged. After the excitement in his heart faded away, he gradually fell silent. This sort of gray and colorless eyes caused great waves to rise in Qin Yu's heart. After thinking for a moment, he slowly said, "Although you have encountered misfortune, you are still alive. That is the most important point." Alive? Zhou, who looked at Zhou Hui, who was curled up on the ground. His pupils shrank, revealing endless pain. But sometimes this is a matter even more difficult than death. Qin Yu lightly said, "Perhaps I can make her forget everything that happened today." Zhou Hu froze. Tears gushed out from his gray eyes, and he fell to his knees, kowtowing. "My lord, please help her." Zhou Hui woke up from her coma. She felt a terrible headache and couldn't help but cough. Then she discovered that she was being carried on her big brother's back as they walked through the fog-shrouded mountains. "Big brother, what happened to me?" Zhou, who turned around and revealed a smile. "You're awake. You suddenly fell unconscious, but luckily we ran into a kind-hearted fellow. He told me of a safe place. As long as we reach there, everything will be fine." "Ah, that's great." Zhou Hui straightened her back and rubbed her temples. She felt as if something was missing in her mind. She only remembered that she had been lying down behind a tree and she had faintly seen several fellow clansmen. A throbbing feeling drilled out from the depths of her heart. Zhou Hui shivered. She felt her entire body turn cold, as if she had just crawled out from a cave of ice. "What is it?" "Big brother, I suddenly feel very scared. It's like I just had a very, very frightening nightmare." Don't be afraid. Big brother is here. Big brother, you are the best. You are still weak. Don't talk anymore. Lie down and sleep a little longer." "Okay, then I will sleep a little longer. Big brother, if you are tired, just call me." Zhou Hui's voice gradually faded away and she fell asleep once more. Zhou, who held her hands tightly. With a voice that only he could hear, he muttered, "Big brother is useless. I wasn't able to protect you. Big brother swears that I will protect you with my life in the future. I will never let you suffer any more harm." Qin Yu looked away. This was all he could do. It was impossible for him to waste time and personally send them to 9 Nether Peak. Qin Yu turned around and looked in the direction of the array formation. His eyes narrowed, and a faint trace of cold intent flowed through them. Now the fallen humans should have already discovered that Dongdo had been killed. Now he would have to see what they would do next. Shua, Qin Yu's figure moved. He restrained his aura and melted into the fog like a shadow. Qing Lin's eyes flashed open. His eyebrows furrowed together, finding it hard to conceal the anger in them. Dongdo had died. He had actually died. With a flip of his hand, a compass appeared in his palm. This compass was divided into 12 sections, and one of them had already broken apart. This compass was an internal object of the fallen humans. Every 12 people formed a group, and each cultivator in the group held a compass. During the process of carrying out a mission, once a person died, the corresponding section of the compass would shatter and warn the remaining people. It's Lord Dongdo. How is this possible? Loud cries came from the mouths of everyone. Who? Qing Lin let out a deep breath. His eyes were like an eagle's as he swept around. But beneath the primordial azure gold array, all auras were suppressed. He couldn't even find the place where Dongdo had died. But it was clear that in this seemingly calm fog, a terrifying hunter had already snuck in, and his target was them. The atmosphere fell deathly silent. A fallen human broke the silence. Mr. Qing Lin, Lord Dongdo has an honorable status. We must find the killer. Qing Lin shook his head. No, we don't need to do anything. His eyes were cold and gloomy. Continue breaking the array formation. He will appear. In the territory ruled by Obum, the only one that dared to kill fallen humans was the Vault of the Heavens punishment. But they had just arrived. Even if the Vault of the Heavens received news of this, it was impossible for them to arrive so quickly. Then there was only one possibility left. The one who killed Dongdo was a powerhouse sent by the person who laid down the primordial azure gold array. If so, then the other party's goal was clear. They were hunting them in secret to provoke them and cause the fallen humans to chase them down, thus hindering the process of breaking the primordial azure gold array. Humph, humph, humph. I won't let you do as you wish, another fallen human said. But Mr. Qing Lin, your safety. Even Dongdo had been killed, so the strength of the hidden hunter could be imagined. They might not be able to resist it. Qing Lin's face was expressionless. He looked at the fog in front of him. It's fine. I want to see whether or not he dares to come and kill me. Chapter 869. The fallen humans weren't fooled. Qin Yu stretched out his hand and spread out his fingers. Runes appeared on his flesh and blood, releasing a bright light that projected the primordial blue-gold array diagram. Now, the range of the array formation was growing larger and larger. If this continued, finding the eye of the array was only a matter of time. Pa! Qin Yu clenched his fist, and the array diagram vanished. He frowned and whispered to himself, "As I thought, things weren't so simple." There were clearly intelligent individuals amongst the fallen humans. They didn't respond to the deaths and injuries because they feared him, but because they had grasped the crux of the matter. As long as they continued to break the array formation, whether they were willing or not, they would appear on their own initiative. To kill someone from the eastern capital, Qin Yu had first seized the opportunity to severely wound him and then used all of his cards to barely accomplish this. If he had to face a group of fallen humans head-on, all that awaited him was death. The situation fell into a deadlock. But Qin Yu was well aware that he didn't have time to delay. If the primordial blue-gold array was broken, his fate would be miserable. What should he do? Qin Yu frowned. He looked into the distance, towards that fog-covered mountain depression. That was where the fallen humans were. In the mountain depression, with Qing Lin as the center, 10 fallen humans spread out, each guarding a direction. Their auras were thick and cold. Any living being that tried to approach couldn't escape their senses. At this moment, one of the fallen humans opened his eyes, which were covered by his black robe. A sharp light shone through his eyes. He turned his head, his eyes seemingly inadvertently sweeping over a towering mountain in the distance. Because of the primordial blue-gold array, this mountain was like a moon in the water, blurry and illusory like a massive phantom. After a brief pause, the fallen human looked away and closed his eyes. He stretched out a finger from his sleeve and quietly tapped the ground. Shwa! A gray shadow flashed along the ground, vanishing without a trace. Qin Yu's heart raced. Without hesitation, he turned around and saw a gray shadow surge up from the ground. In just a breath of time, it had formed a gray, misty figure. Although it was only a phantom, Qin Yu could still feel a familiar aura from it. It came from a fallen human. Stepping down, Qin Yu lifted a hand and grasped his fingers together. White, black, blue, red, and yellow lights erupted, weaving together to form a disk that suppressed the phantom. Unexpectedly, the phantom didn't resist at all. It was directly suppressed by the 5-element samsara. Qin Yu's eyes flashed, and he stopped destroying it. "So, you really are a member of the disciplined firmament," the figure said slowly. His voice was pale and numb. Clearly it had been altered. "Punish the heavens?" Qin Yu glanced at the ring of rebirth on his hand. He remained calm and collected. The eyes of the phantom just now hadn't escaped his notice. Could it be that the ring of rebirth was the standard equipment of a certain organization? No, that shouldn't be the case. Considering how precious the ring of rebirth was, it was impossible to mass-produce it. Qin Yu didn't know what the problem was, but that wasn't important. What was important was that the other party seemed to be a little closer to him because of this organization. That's right, it was intimacy. Even though he had changed his voice, he could not hide the subtle emotional fluctuations between the lines. "Who are you?" Qin Yu asked in a low voice. The illusory figure shook his head. "I came here to remind you not to underestimate the power of the fallen humans. Even if your aura restraining technique is exquisite, I was still able to discover you. Since I can discover you, others can do the same. Leave. Qing Lin has already seen through your plan. He won't waste any time chasing you down. As long as you show yourself, you will be killed. Qing Lin's strength is far greater than what he has shown. Even if you can kill East Du, you won't have any hope of defeating him." Without waiting for Qin Yu's reply, the phantom shattered with a cracking sound. With a flick of his sleeves, the power of the 5-element samsara was scattered. Qin Yu looked deeply at the cave and then turned to leave without hesitation. He didn't choose to give up. This phantom was right about one thing. He seemed to be too confident in his own ability to hide. There was nothing wrong with being a bit more cautious. An hour later, Qin Yu stopped. He carefully sensed that he hadn't been marked or tracked. Then he lifted his hand and several sword lights flashed, opening up a temporary foothold. He sat down cross-legged, restoring the little bit of strength he had used up as his thoughts raced. First of all, although he didn't know the identity of this phantom, he shouldn't have any malicious intent. Otherwise, if this phantom found his position and the fallen humans surrounded him, it would be impossible for Qin Yu to escape. Thus, the credibility of what he said before was extremely high. Qing Lin, he should be one of the fallen humans responsible for breaking the array formation. He was incomparably strong, even stronger than East Du, who had died at his hands. In order to kill East Du, Qin Yu had already exhausted all of his strength. Following this logic, he had no chance of victory against Qing Lin. Moreover, Qing Lin had the assistance of other fallen humans. Qin Yu let out a deep breath and rubbed his temples. With the information he currently had, he had no chance of winning. But the crux of the matter was that he had no path of retreat. Even though he knew he wasn't this phantom's match, he still had to grit his teeth and face it. If he couldn't face this phantom head-on, then he could only find another way. Qing Lin and the other fallen humans had entered the little fragrant mountain with the sole goal of unraveling the primordial azure gold array. If that was the case, then he could start from this angle. There might be a chance. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows in deep thought. A moment later, his eyes brightened. After a moment of deliberation, a method rapidly formed in his mind. 9 Nether Peak. As the one managing the array formation, the Stronghold Master was the core of the entire array formation. Not only was he unable to move the array formation, but the losses he suffered were also unimaginably terrifying. Divine, Dr. Yi carefully poured a pill into his hand. "Miss, take this pill." The Stronghold Master nodded. She took the pill and swallowed it. Her pale face quickly flushed red. But this wasn't a good sign. This was only a pill. To her, the strength contained within wasn't worth mentioning at all. But now, it was able to directly change her outward appearance. This proved that the strength within her body had already been severely damaged. Divine Dr. Yi revealed a worried expression. "Miss, how are you feeling?" The Stronghold Master said, "Old Yi, don't worry. I'm fine." Hearing this, Divine Dr. Yi felt a little more relieved. The Miss wasn't someone who tried to show off. Since she said this, then she was temporarily fine. Suddenly, the Stronghold Master stuffily coughed. A bit of blood appeared on his face, but in the blink of an eye it completely vanished. Another node of the formation had been destroyed because the primordial azure gold array was forcefully activated. Once the array formation was damaged, the person controlling it would also suffer a backlash. Divine Dr. Yi clenched his teeth. Just what is that brat Qin Yu doing? It's already been so long and he hasn't done anything at all. If this continued, the array I would be found sooner or later. Once the array I was destroyed, the Miss would inevitably suffer heavy losses. Thinking of this, his complexion became increasingly ugly. "I'm fine." The Stronghold Master slowly said, "I have never placed all my hopes on others. Old Yi, please give me a heaven-mending pill." "Heaven-mending pill?" Old Yi cried out. "Miss, what are you planning to do? You have an honorable status, and you absolutely cannot be harmed. Even if we lose this time, we will still have other chances. Please do not take any risks." The Stronghold Master opened his eyes. His bright and spirited eyes were dim, but there was a calm expression within. There wasn't the least bit of anxiety or irritation caused by the current situation. "Old Yi, don't worry. Since I want the heaven-mending pill, I have a certain degree of confidence that there won't be any problems. Miss." Divine Dr. Yi hesitated. He met her gaze and was silent for several breaths of time. "Very well. But no matter what, before you make a decision, I ask Miss to consider everything carefully." I understand." Divine Doctor, you lifted a hand and drew a line in the air. Space split open and he reached his hand in. After several breaths of time, he took out a jade bottle covered in runes. On the surface of the bottle, the runes were like fireflies. They slowly flowed and emitted a faint halo of light. "Thank you, Old Yi." The Stronghold Master took the jade bottle and closed his eyes. At this moment, he couldn't conceal the exhaustion that gushed out from the depths of his heart. Although Old Ye's status was high, there were some secrets of the family that he didn't have the qualifications to know. This time, she couldn't afford to lose otherwise. Everything she had before would be stripped away. This even included her own fate. So, no matter what, she had to gamble this once. Light shined down upon every corner of the temple, warm and pure. As one bathed in this light, one's mind seemed to be cleansed, no longer having any distracting thoughts. Clad in a suit of light armor, Mo Ming walked into the temple. He knelt down on one knee and placed his hand on his forehead. "The Radiant Guard greets the elders. Mo Ming, we have confirmed the news. Qinglin has left Opham's imperial city." An old voice echoed out in the temple, and the source of this voice was a radiant sphere of light. It was so dazzling that it was impossible to see what was inside. "Shua!" Mo Ming fiercely looked up. He said in a low voice, "Elder, please tell me where Qinglin is now." "Opham's territory, at the edge of Great King City, in Little Fragrant Mountain." The old voice continued, "Your mission is to kill him at all costs." "Yes." Mo Ming stood up. He turned and walked out. The armor of light on his body collided with each other, constantly emitting cold and crisp sounds. It was just like the raging, killing intent in his heart. It was like a raging tide, surging without end. "Qinglin, Qinglin, after several hundred years, you have finally appeared once more. This time I will personally cut off your head." Qin Yu left the area of the fallen humans. He quietly shuttled through the fog like a silent ghost. Deep in his eyes, a dark golden light surged. It pierced through all appearances, searching for the ultimate essence within the fragments. 10 days later, Qin Yu stopped. He lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. Strength erupted from his fingertip like an arrow, instantly piercing through the ground and sinking deep into it. But soon, the hole in the ground began to regenerate and heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Qin Yu's eyes brightened and he revealed a smile. Without staying any longer, he turned and left. After another 13 days, Qin Yu left behind a mark of his strength in a second location. After another 17 days, Qin Yu found a third location. 50 days later, he stood on a cliff. His eyes swept around, sensing the mark of his strength. He muttered, "I've finally completed it." He took a step forward, and his body left the cliff. Like a stone, he fell in and was swallowed up by the tumbling fog. Chapter 870. Qing Lin had completely immersed himself in the array formation world. He had forgotten about the eastern capital he had killed and forgotten his goal in coming to Little Fragrant Mountain. Now, there was only a single obsession in his eyes. He had to break through the Sky Unity Azure Gold Array and capture the person who laid it down. If Qing Lin was only looking forward to breaking the array formation, then now he was sure that as long as he could thoroughly perceive this array formation, he would be able to break through his bottleneck and take a massive step forwards in his cultivation. Stepping into a completely new boundary, this was a chance he had waited for hundreds of years. He could not allow any accidents to occur. Shua! Qing Lin's figure flashed and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already several thousand feet away. Qing Lin raised his hand and pressed forward. With a light paw sound, an unremarkable wildflower on the ground directly cracked open, turning into powder and dissipating. As far as the eye could see, the vast expanse of fog was swept away. Another array formation node was broken. But this time, Qing Lin didn't continue. He seemed to sense something. After a brief pause, he sat down cross-legged and began to perceive the node. For days later, Qing Lin opened his eyes. He reared his head back and laughed. "I found you! I finally found you!" He had already calculated where the eye of the array formation was. Rumble, rumble. A low and deep rumbling sound suddenly rang out from all directions, as if a furious wave was surging and sweeping through everything. "Mr. Qing Lin, be careful! There's a change in the array formation. Block it." With a loud roar, the 10 fallen humans turned around. In the next moment, the calm fog in front of them suddenly fell into a berserk frenzy. Like mountains toppling over and rivers flowing in reverse, the wild fog tide approached. With a loud shout, the 10 fallen humans attacked at the same time. Even though they faced the terrifying fog tide, there wasn't the least bit of fear on their faces. Bang! Heaven-shaking fluctuations of strength erupted. The 10 fallen humans were like 10 pillars that supported the heavens, standing between the heavens and earth as they tore apart the incoming fog tide. But soon they cried out in alarm. "This is bad. Protect Mr. Qing Lin." After being pierced through, the fog tide split in half. After passing through them, it condensed together once more. This time, there was nothing in front of them. There was no longer any obstruction. Only Qing Lin was left. Bang! The tide of fog soared into the skies. During this process, it split into 8 pieces. Each piece began to wildly contract, constantly collapsing and condensing into 8 large azure gold hands. They were so heavy that they seemed solid, and one could even clearly see the markings on the surface of the palms. Without the slightest pause, the 8 large azure gold hands pressed down at the same time, all of them targeting Qing Lin. Once he was killed, the matter of breaking the formation would naturally end. "Humph! Are you finally going to make a move?" Qing Lin raised his head and looked up. A violent aura descended from the sky like an invisible mountain, wanting to completely suppress him. Although it hadn't arrived yet, the terrifying power had already caused his robe to stick to his body, making it as stiff as iron. The corner of Qing Lin's mouth curled up in a mocking smile. but there was also a hint of madness in his eyes. Black light condensed into a compass that spun crazily. Facing the 8 oppressive hands, he didn't even try to escape, because this was the backlash from the Tai Azure Gold Array. As long as he was in the array, there was no way for him to escape. The only way was to face it head-on. If he succeeded, he would completely grasp the initiative, and the main formation master would no longer have a chance to struggle. But if he failed, the result would be death. Bang! With an earth-shattering sound, the 8 large azure gold hands engulfed Qing Lin's figure like a closing flower petal. The earth shook and countless cracks appeared, rapidly spreading outwards. In the blink of an eye, they turned into bottomless abysses that seemed to lead straight to hell. In the distance, several large mountains were affected. They trembled and shattered, turning into countless stones of different sizes that rumbled even further away. The 10 fallen humans that rushed over in an attempt to interfere were struck by the shock waves. They tumbled over and smashed into the ground, forming a massive pit in the ground. The Tai Azure Gold Array's backlash was terrifyingly strong. All of the fallen humans that were sent flying backwards did the same thing. They took out the compass in their hands and let out a long breath of relief. Luckily, Mr. Qing Lin hadn't died. The East capital had been killed, and it was already difficult for them to escape punishment. If Qing Lin were to die as well, the consequences would be unimaginable. The 8 azure gold hands had completely frozen over. They lost all fluctuations of strength, standing tall like giant stone statues. With them as the center, the surrounding area for 1,000 miles was destroyed, a complete mess. Who? Heavy and labored breathing came from the 8 azure gold hands. Qing Lin knelt on the ground, his face deathly pale without the slightest hint of blood. In his palm was a white lotus flower. It seemed as if it had just been plucked, and there were still drops of dew between the petals that hadn't yet scattered. Now the lotus flower constantly revolved in his palm, releasing a faint light that covered Qing Lin's entire body. The reason he was able to resist the strike of the Tai Azure Gold Array was because of this lotus flower. It looks like I survived. Then, I will definitely be able to break through this Tai Azure Gold Array. Qing Lin's deep and low laughter was filled with excitement, constantly echoing in the air. Just wait. I will soon find you and capture you. At that time, everything you have will belong to me. Looking down at the lotus flower in his palm, Qing Lin revealed a helpless look. This treasure that the emperor had bestowed upon him in the past still had a portion of its strength left, but since it had been used, it could no longer be preserved. This was a bit of a waste. He had waited for a long time and determined that the hidden hunter hadn't chosen this moment to attack. Otherwise, the remaining strength of the lotus flower would be enough to instantly erase him from the world. He lifted a hand and the lotus flower shot into the skies. It met the 8 solidified azure gold hands and vanished. It was like the existence of this lotus flower was nothing more than a bubble. Between the heavens and earth, a strong wind blew past. The 8 azure gold hands seemed to have been corroded by the endless years and disintegrated into endless powder. Puff! The stronghold master spat out a mouthful of blood. Without hesitation, she lifted a hand and swallowed down the heaven-mending pill beside her. Even so, the shaking within her body didn't stop. Peepa, peepa, small sounds constantly spread out. But as these sounds fell into Miracle Dr. Ye's ears, it was like the heavens were falling and the earth was cracking apart. His complexion changed again and again. Stepping forwards, Miracle Doctor, Yi lifted a hand and his finger fell between the stronghold master's eyebrows. His fingertip instantly turned golden and a powerful strength surged out, forcefully suppressing the backlash caused by the rampaging strength within her body. After a moment, the stronghold master's body gradually calmed down. She opened her eyes in an incomparably weak manner. "Thank you, old Yi." But at this time, Miracle Dr. Ye's complexion was even uglier than before. "Miss, why are you so heavily injured?" The stronghold master bitterly smiled. Since things have come to this, I will no longer hide it. The consumption of forcefully activating the Tai Azure Gold Array is greater than I expected. Now that I am one with it, if the array formation is broken, I will suffer a horrifying backlash. Miss, Miracle Doctor, Yi roared out, you have a body of 10,000 gold, and you are a noble existence. So what if you fail for a moment? How can you injure your foundation because of this? Although we are only descended bodies, our souls are connected to our main bodies. Once we are injured too heavily, it will be difficult for our main bodies to survive. Let's give up on the struggle. Even if we lose this chance with Miss Status, there will always be other methods. The stronghold master shook her head. Oldie, no matter what, I cannot lose this time. She reluctantly waved her hand. The specific reason involves family secrets, so I cannot tell you. But I really cannot admit defeat. Old Yez's face stiffened. He furrowed his eyebrows and his eyes shook. Miss, could that rumor be true? The stronghold master didn't speak, but her silence explained everything. How hateful, these shameful things, they actually dare. Miracle Doctor, Yi angrily roared out. If it weren't for Brother Zhou suffering an accident, then these little thieves wouldn't have the qualifications to point fingers in front of Miss. The stronghold master closed her eyes, not allowing herself to reveal any weakness. She said in a soft voice, Oldie, this is an internal matter of the family, so don't interfere. I'm only telling you this because I hope that you can unwaveringly support me from now on. Even if I lose everything, I will win this time. Miracle Dr. Yi revealed a struggling expression. Oldie, you are my father's best friend, and you have watched me grow up. Although we are master and servant in name, I have always regarded you as an elder. You know that my temper has always been high, and I have never lowered my head to anyone. But this time, I beg you to help me. The stronghold master's eyes sparkled, and she clenched her fists together. I cannot lose. I absolutely cannot lose. Miss, don't say any more. I promise you. At one of the 12 Obums gathering camps, the heavily injured Qinglin led 10 fallen humans in. As he recuperated, he urgently contacted Grand King City. Soon, an order was passed down. Qinglin temporarily obtained the authority to command all the Obums. 3 days later, the 10 Obum camps opened at the same time. Under the leadership of a fallen human, they rushed towards the various locations of Fragrant Hill. Every Doro human held a lamp that Qinglin had given them. Wherever the light shone, it could temporarily dispel the fog that shrouded the area. They only had one mission, and that was to capture as many living beings in Fragrant Hill as possible. This was because Qinglin was about to hold a blood sacrifice in order to break the Tai Azure Gold Array and destroy the eye of the array. For a time, all of Fragrant Hill became a living hell on earth. Run. Don't look back. Go deeper into the mountains. This was a large-scale human settlement. Several experts killed the intruding black-armored Obums, but the endless black flood caused despair to appear in their eyes. There was no way to escape. Right now, the only thing they could do was to do everything in their power to stop the black flood and fight for a chance of survival for their clansmen. Of course, they could also escape, and their chances of survival were much higher than others. However, their ancestors had lived here for generations, and behind them were their wives, children, and relatives. It was impossible for them to retreat. Moments later, the human settlement was razed to the ground, leaving behind only a mess that silently recounted everything that had just happened. All of the humans, even their corpses, were taken away by the black-armored Obums to be used as materials for the blood sacrifice. At the same time, similar events were occurring in many places. The flood of the 10 Obums, carrying the captured living beings, slowly gathered towards the same location. Chapter 871. Because the mountain peak was shrouded in fog, there was an even more aloof and dangerous atmosphere to it. But now it had been sliced horizontally, forming a massive platform. 12 moving obums gathered here. The air was filled with curses, reprimands, and cries of fear. A powerful crocodile monster beast was over 100 meters long. Its body was covered in terrifying scales, and it possessed astonishing defensive capabilities. Now it reared its head back and roared. Its giant tail wildly swung about as it tried to escape from its imprisonment, but it was unable to shake the cage of light around its body. Its giant eyes revealed fear. It roared again and again as it struggled even more intensely. It seemed to have a premonition that some terrifying shadow was about to arrive. As for monster beasts that were equal in strength or even stronger, there were many, many of them. There were even several 1,000-foot tall mountain giants that could tear apart the skies with a wave of their hands. Even so, they were still suppressed. Beside these astonishingly strong monster beasts were an even greater number of humans and obums that were fleeing. There were so many of them that one couldn't see the end of them. Qing Lin floated in the air. His eyes were indifferent, but there was an irrepressible burning heat in them. He let out a deep breath. Let's begin. The 12 obums began to revolve. They crazily lashed out with their whips, driving the captured life forms to their predetermined positions. Now, the platform formed from the mountain peak was the array disc in Qing Lin's hands. The captured life forms were the source of the array formation's strength. This array formation was named blood sacrifice. In the long history of the obums, it was the first and only array formation that they had discovered. It was an extremely crude, yet terrifyingly powerful array formation. After Qing Lin betrayed his faith and became a member of the fallen humanity, he obtained all the information regarding blood sacrifice. He spent several hundred years supplementing and improving it. Now, the blood sacrifice had been reborn. This was the first time it had appeared in this world, so it would surely cause a great stir. Qing Lin looked around the entire mountain platform. After determining that there was nothing wrong, he lifted a finger and pointed it between his eyebrows. In the next moment, his eyes turned pitch black. Rumble, rumble. There was a violent explosion above his head. 2 pitch-black grinding discs with countless runes flowing on their surface squeezed out from nothingness. They spun and emitted thunderous roars. They stirred up the vast strength of the world, causing an unknown strength to gather and descend. Shwa! A perfectly straight black beam of light shot out from between the 2 millstones and directly hit the center of the platform on the mountain peak. There was no sound at all. Complex black veins that looked like tree roots grew rapidly from the center of the platform and spread in all directions. After a few breaths, the meridians had covered the entire platform. Qing Lin spread his arms and raised his head to look at the millstone above his head. He loudly chanted. Short and strange syllables that carried the aura of endless years echoed throughout the world. Then, the black veins that covered the entire platform suddenly came to life. They swam slowly as if they were sensing this world. Soon they made a discovery. Ah, what is this? What is this? Scram! Scram! A white obum screamed in horror. I have the bloodline of nobility. Even if I commit a grave crime, I still need to go through the imperial city's trial before I can be judged. You have no right to punish me. This is a crime. You are committing a crime. Let me go. A black vein extended to the side of the white obum. It actually emerged from the ground like a real root and wrapped around him. The ends of the black veins began to split apart, turning into countless smaller tentacles that burrowed into his body. No, save me. Save me! The white obum screamed mournfully. It was as if the invasion of the black veins made him feel a terrifying pain. But soon his scream stopped. His body went limp and he fell into a deep slumber. But at the same time, the black veins that had burrowed into his body let out gulping sounds. The dark red color of blood spread out in the darkness, finally turning the veins scarlet. The scarlet color started from the ends and extended all the way up. What was happening to the white obum was also happening to all the living beings in the array disk on the platform. Mournful roars, despairing screams, pitiful pleas, all sorts of sounds interweaved together, forming a scene of destruction. When the mountain giant that was hundreds of meters tall could no longer maintain its massive body, it fell to the ground with a roar of indignation. The platform on the mountain peak fell into a deathly silence. Apart from the sound of the wind, there was no other sound. All the sacrificed living beings in the arrayed disk had fallen into a deep slumber, and at this time the black veins that covered the arrayed disk had turned completely dark red. Layers of blood surged on the surface, like countless streams of blood that constantly gathered together and poured into the same place. The 12 black-armored obums each suppressed a side of the array disk. Blood fiends roiled around their bodies as they maintained their isolation from the array. They had already fused into the blood sacrifice, becoming a part of the array formation. If it weren't for the blood fiends isolating them, they would have suffered the same fate as the sacrificed living beings. Blood was extracted from the bodies of every sacrificed living being. It flowed along the veins and gathered at the point where the pillar of light fell. Then it began to extend upwards until it finally poured into the 2 spinning black millstones in the skies. They were like 2 starving vicious beasts that had slumbered for countless years. They wildly swallowed all the blood that gathered, their colors constantly changing. The deepest darkness intersected with the dark red blood. The aura of the world began to change. The air became as thick and viscous as a swamp. An invisible oppressive strength stretched out like tentacles, constantly spreading outwards. It was like trillions of mountains were toppling over from the highest heavens. A terrifying suppression was hidden. Qing Lin reared his head back and laughed. He lifted his hand, and with a loud rumble, the 2 spinning millstones began to move. They flew out from the range of the platform and landed in the skies above the endless cliff. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, who would have thought that you could fuse the array formation eye into the bottomless abyss, becoming one with it? Just based on this point alone, your array formation cultivation is no less than mine, but what a pity. This is my home field. You are doomed to fail. Now let us end all of this. His 5 fingers came crashing down. Rumble, rumble. There was a heaven-shaking explosion. The 2 millstones rapidly fell. As they spun, they seemed to encounter some invisible resistance. At first it was subtle, but soon it rose to an astonishing degree. As the millstones spun, they rubbed against the surrounding void, releasing blinding sparks. The originally loud rumbling became even more intense. It was like the roar of thunder, but also like magma buried deep beneath the earth, roaring as it tried to break free. One rune after another appeared from nothingness as the 2 millstones spun. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count. They overlapped with each other and formed a thick barrier that almost filled the entire cliff. But now the 2 millstones, supported by the power of the blood sacrifice, were like 2 terrifying drills that crazily tore through all that stood in their way. A massive number of runes shattered and disintegrated, vanishing into thin air. Qing Lin revealed a fanatical look, and his eyes brightened. The incomplete Tai Azure Gold Array actually has such strength. If I had allowed you to finish laying it down, I fear I wouldn't have had the courage to rush in. But now, all of your resistance is meaningless. It will only cause you to suffer more pain from the backlash after the array eye is broken. Give up. You no longer have any hope. I know that you can hear every word I say. As long as you give up your resistance, I can promise you that I will protect your life in the end. 9 Nether Peak. Where the stronghold master was, the ground around her cracked and cracked, sinking down several inches. Her face was pale, and blood constantly flowed from the corner of her mouth. Drop by drop, it fell to the ground and shattered. Miracle Doctor Ye's face was dark and his eyes were cold. He didn't make any sound, only constantly activating the medicine furnace in front of him. Wisps of blue medicinal energy were constantly released from the mouth of the furnace. wrapping around the stronghold master's body and being sucked into his body through his nose. Qing Lin's icy cold voice was transmitted through the vibrations of the array's collision. The stronghold master was expressionless, as if he couldn't feel the pain he was suffering. Miracle Dr. Ye's eyes narrowed, the coldness in them becoming thicker. If the miss failed in the end, then he would pay the price to let these people know just what kind of existence they had provoked. This was just a race. In a world war, it was normal for them to be wiped out. And he, as a top powerhouse of the medical path and a grandmaster of alchemy and poison refining, as long as the price was high enough, he had the qualifications to start a world war. Stubborn fool. Qing Lin's eyes revealed a trace of anger. If he wasn't worried that the backlash from breaking the array would be too great and cause irreparable harm to the master of the array, he wouldn't have wasted so much time. But now, the other party clearly didn't have any thoughts of giving up. Taking a deep breath, Qing Lin's eyes turned icy cold. Since he had lost the most optimal option, there was no need to delay any further. Once he broke through the array, the other party would become fish on the chopping block. He could do whatever he wanted with them. In his pitch-black eyes, light suddenly rose. The unconscious, blood-stained beings on the summit platform began to twitch, their bodies thinning at a speed visible to the naked eye. The meridians wrapped around their bodies and drilled into them. At this time, they swelled up, wildly plundering their flesh and blood essence. The blood sacrifice had been activated with all its strength, no longer holding anything back. With a heaven-shaking explosion, the two grinding stones that gathered all the strength of the blood sacrifice erupted with an incomparably terrifying might. Rumble, rumble. In that moment, runes in the void collapsed and dissipated. One could even hear the sounds of mountains and rivers trembling and groaning. This was the protective strength of the primordial azure gold array's array eye. As the grinding stones crazily bombarded it, it began to gradually collapse. In the darkness, Qin Yu was sitting cross-legged. At this time he heard something and his eyes flashed open. Looking up, he could see a giant vortex above his head. Now it was spinning slower and slower, as if it would soon come to a standstill. This strange sound came from this vortex, as if something was about to tear through it and forcefully arrive here. "It's finally here?" Qin Yu whispered to himself. His eyes brightened, as if two balls of fire were burning within them. Chapter 872. Bang! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. The trillions of runes that filled the 100,000-foot cliff completely collapsed and dissipated. The resistance from the Tai Azure Gold Array had ended in failure. Qing Lin roared. "I said that everything you did was in vain. It's over." He stepped forwards, landing on the two grinding stones and sinking down with them. The array I was within. After destroying it, even if the Tai Azure Gold Array wasn't completely destroyed, it would still lose most of its strength. And more importantly, through the array eye, Qing Lin could lock onto the location of the person who laid down the array. With a loud cry, the stronghold master's eyes widened in shock. Just now, she had clearly felt that the protective strength of the array eye had been broken through. But soon after, a strength erupted. With an irresistible momentum, it severed her connection with the array eye and took over everything. Miracle Dr. Yi anxiously asked, "Miss, what happened?" The stronghold master took a deep breath. "There is an unknown powerhouse interfering. I have already lost control of the array eye." Miracle Dr. Yi was shocked. How is this possible? Could it be that hidden master of the bullet family? The stronghold master shook his head. It can't be. If she really had something to rely on, she would have already broken through the Tai Azure Gold Array. There would have been no need to go through so much trouble. This was the truth. The two fell silent. Things seemed to have suddenly become complicated and confusing, heading towards an unknown conclusion. The stronghold master suddenly smiled. "To me, the situation has already collapsed to the extreme. So what if there is a variable? It can't possibly become any worse. Perhaps this will be a turning point. Space twisted and ripples rose up. The spinning, grinding stones sank into it, breaking into the space of the array eye. Qinglin, you finally arrived. A calm voice came from all directions. Qinglin's complexion changed. Who is it? After looking around, he looked down. His eyes passed through the gaps between the grinding stones and met Qin Yu's gaze. With just a single glance, his heart suddenly constricted while terror and terror surged out like a tide, and it practically drowned his mind in an instant. In Qinglin's eyes, Qin Yu's aura wasn't too strong. He had absolute confidence he could kill him in a single strike. But at this moment, for no reason at all, he could feel the taste of destruction coming from Qin Yu. Die. With a roar, Qinglin attacked without hesitation. He didn't know who Qin Yu was, but all he wanted was to kill him. His feet landed heavily on the ground. The two grinding stones' revolutions suddenly rose. They were no longer purely consuming the strength provided by the blood sacrifice. At this moment, Qinglin spared no expense and used his own cultivation to activate them, causing their might to rise explosively once more. Bang, bang. The millstone descended with a loud rumble, like two falling stars. The corners of Qin Yu's lips curled up in a happy smile. If he wanted to sneak attack them, he would have done so immediately. There was no need for words. It was all for the sake of alerting the enemy and making Qinglin feel threatened. Now it seemed that things were progressing much more smoothly than he had expected. Then let's begin. Raising his head, he looked up at the two millstones that were descending with an aura that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. His words were like a thunderclap. All enemies explode. As the voice faded, countless vortexes appeared within the eye of the formation, madly rotating and releasing a chaotic and violent aura. Qinglin's expression changed drastically. He suddenly discovered that the millstones he controlled were becoming irritable. They were like two puppets that no longer obeyed his control. They were eager to break free from his control. With a loud roar, Qinglin punched his chest. Blood wildly gushed out, condensing into two runes. Go. With a flick of his sleeves, the runes held out and fused into the two millstones. The signs of struggling immediately vanished, and Qinglin felt a little more at ease. But at this time, a cold laugh echoed in his ears. It's useless. Qin Yu took a step back, his entire body fusing into space. This is bad. Qinglin's heart violently shrank. In the next moment, a heaven-shaking explosion erupted. Within the array formation, all the vortexes that appeared exploded at the same time. After fusing into the runes and barely managing to control the millstones, they also fell into a frenzy as the vortexes exploded. Qinglin only had time to take out a yellow paper talisman and place it on his body. In the next moment, he was completely swallowed up by the explosive fluctuations. Rumble, rumble. Deep within the 100,000-foot cliff, space instantly swelled. Cracks appeared, all of them turning scarlet red. It was like tumbling magma underground, roaring as it broke through countless barriers and arrived at the surface of the earth, about to tear apart the final line of defense. In the next moment, space was torn to shreds. A straight beam of light shot into the skies, its entire body scarlet as if it were made from blood. It pierced through the endless fog and tore through the clouds. The long-awaited sunlight sprinkled down on the ground for the first time. But at this moment, the fallen humans and the black-armored Opums didn't feel any warmth at all. There was only an endless chill that gushed out from the depths of their hearts, making them feel as if they had fallen into an icy lake. Puff, puff. Blood spurted out of Qinglin's mouth like crazy. The yellow paper talisman on his body turned into powder with a pop sound. Only after exhausting the strength of this life-saving treasure did he barely manage to protect himself from the explosion. But before he could catch his breath, Qinglin's complexion changed once more. With a deep roar, he thrust out a hand. In the next moment, space fluctuated and a palm came crashing down like lightning. Bang! The two palms collided. Qin Yu stuffily coughed and was forced backwards. Across from him, Qing Lin spat out a mouthful of blood. He retreated even faster and in an even more distressed state. That's right, he did possess a terrifying level of strength, and he also had the protection of the yellow paper talisman, so he was able to survive the explosion. But the explosion of the two millstones had already caused a severe backlash to him. To be able to spit out a mouthful of blood to block Qin Yu's sneak attack was already considered strong enough. Kill him! Qing Lin crazily roared. He borrowed the strength of the backlash to retreat even faster and further. At the same time, his 10 fingers flew around his body. With every finger, his aura stabilized by a fraction. After stepping into the Great Tao through a forbidden array formation and cultivating to this day, Qing Lin's body had become a great array formation. Every inch of his flesh and blood, every bone, even his organs, lymph, everything was a part of this great array formation. Now that he had suffered a backlash, the array formation was damaged. But as an array formation grandmaster, Qing Lin could choose to give up a portion of his strength to restore the broken array formation. As long as he could do this, then even if his strength was greatly reduced, he was confident he could still kill Qin Yu. Kill! With a loud roar, 10 fallen humans shot into the skies. Each one of them erupted with monstrous slaughter energy. But at this time, miserable screams rang out. 2 fallen humans were cut in half and their blood rained down to the ground. "Juan, you've gone insane!" The other fallen humans rapidly drew back. They pointed at the saber-wielding shadows and gnashed their teeth. Juan lifted his hand and pulled down his black hood. He squinted at the sunlight that sprinkled down from the heavens and lightly said, "I'm not crazy. It's just that I don't have the heart to miss such a good opportunity." He lifted his hand, and the saber-wielding shadows that had been caught off guard by the 2 fallen humans vanished into his body, and a saber appeared in his hand. With a wave of his saber, the beads of blood were shaken away. Then Juan stepped forwards and rushed towards the 7 fallen humans. "I will help you block them and kill Qing Lin as soon as possible. Damn it, he is a traitor. Kill him. Kill." The 7 fallen humans crazily rushed forwards. In a single exchange, blood shot into the skies. A fallen human's hand was separated from his body, and his head fell to the ground. His eyes were wide with disbelief. It was clear he never imagined that he would be killed in a single move. Between Juan's chest and abdomen, his black robes had been cut open. A long wound had appeared there. His flesh wriggled and tensed, but only a shallow line of blood seeped out. "Ha ha ha! You trash, if you want to kill Grandpa, who then prepare to pay with your life." Juan laughed and rushed forwards on his own initiative. Qin Yu didn't turn his head. He only glanced around and knew that this one was the one who had warned him before. 1 against 7. Even though this one was extremely strong and had grasped a secret technique that allowed him to temporarily erupt with an even greater strength, Qin Yu still didn't have any chances of winning. It could be said that when he cut down the fallen humans and stood in front of Qin Yu, he was doomed to die today. Qin Yu didn't recognize him. In fact, today could be considered their first official meeting. He was well aware that the reason Juan was risking his life was not to save him, but to give him a chance to kill Qing Lin. Thus, the only thing Qin Yu could do was kill Qing Lin. He couldn't let him die in vain. Behind him, Juan fell into a bloody battle. Every time he attacked, a terrifying wound would appear on his body. But with his desperate fighting style, he was able to tie down the 7 fallen humans, making it impossible for them to take a single step forwards. Qin Yu took a deep breath. His eyes locked onto Qing Lin, and he lifted a hand. 5 elements. Bang! White, black, blue, red, and yellow divine light erupted. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a giant vortex that suppressed Qing Lin. His figure paused for a moment, but in the blink of an eye, he tore apart the imprisoning strength. The five-element vortex was immediately torn apart. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, his face paling. Qing Lin roared out loud as he retreated. Although I don't know what method you used to trigger a backlash from the array formation, your strength is far too weak. Even if I am injured, you still cannot kill me. Now, with every breath of time that passes, my strength will be restored by a bit. Once I stabilize my injuries, that will be the time of your death. No. To you, death is far too merciful. I swear that I will use all of the most vicious methods I know on your body. I will have you experience all the terror and despair in this world. I will make you wail in endless pain for all eternity. The icy cold and hateful voice was like a demonic curse that broke into one's mind. If one's will wasn't firm enough, their mind would surely be affected. But Qin Yu's expression didn't change at all. His eyes were as cold as a frozen spring without any ripples. With a turn of his hand, a bronze mirror appeared in his palm. A beam of light held out, shining onto Qing Lin's body. He instantly froze where he was, his soul suppressed by an invisible strength. Bang! A wild aura erupted. Qing Lin's face was filled with anger as he stubbornly stared at the bronze mirror in Qin Yu's hand. What is this? Qin Yu wouldn't answer this question. The moment the bronze mirror's light shined, he pointed out a finger. Ah! Qing Lin cried out miserably. The flesh and blood between his eyebrows broke apart, and cracks began to appear on the surface of his white bones. After using the soul-setting divine light to trap Qing Lin, Qin Yu didn't hesitate to use his strongest killing method, the blue point finger. Chapter 873. A sharp pain between his eyebrows invaded his mind. Qing Lin could clearly hear his skull trembling as he groaned in pain. But at this time what terrified him the most was that, as this finger fell, an invisible strength broke into his mind. It was as cold as ice and as hot as a flame that could burn all. If the first time he saw Qin Yu, he could feel the shadow of death looming over him. But now he could feel the edge of extinction. Qing Lin had an intuition that he couldn't kill Qin Yu. If he didn't run away now, it would be too late. Qing Lin chose to believe his own intuition without hesitation. After countless years of danger, the reason he was able to live until today was largely due to his intuition. With this thought in mind, Qing Lin's hand flashed and another yellow talisman appeared between his fingers. We will definitely meet again in the future. He clenched his teeth and roared. With a thought, the yellow talisman combusted on its own. Space shook. Ripples appeared, wrapping around Qing Lin's figure and causing it to blur. When Qing Lin took out the yellow talisman, Qin Yu frowned. When he detonated the array ice space, he had relied on this to protect himself. Towards the might of these runes, he didn't dare to underestimate them at all. As soon as the spatial ripples appeared, Qin Yu knew that Qing Lin was about to escape. Today he had spent a massive amount of time and energy to prepare. It was only in this way that he was able to severely wound Qing Lin. If he allowed Qing Lin to escape, everything would be in vain in the future. Qing Lin would be even more cautious, and it would be nearly impossible for him to kill him. He absolutely could not be allowed to escape. Qin Yu lifted a hand and ruthlessly grasped forward. Time! A terrifying feeling erupted. His field of vision darkened, and he bit down on the tip of his tongue. With a sweet taste in his mouth, his consciousness was restored. Across from him, the burning yellow talisman came to a standstill. Qing Lin's illusory figure stiffened in the spatial fluctuations. His eyes widened as he stubbornly stared at Qin Yu. With an endless shock, there was also an irrepressible fear. With Qin Yu's current cultivation, if he forcefully galvanized the power of time, he could only interfere for a brief moment. This was his only chance to keep Qing Lin here. He took a step forwards and roared out loud. His bones crackled and his body wildly expanded. In the blink of an eye, he was 10,000 feet tall. He raised his hand and clenched his fist. Heaven and earth rumbled, as if there were millions upon millions of roars that traversed the river of time and space, filled with boundless, unyielding will. Between Qin Yu's 5 fingers, a black halo of light erupted. It rapidly lengthened until it turned into a heaven-piercing spear. Endless slaughter aura lingered around it, so terrifying that it nearly condensed into essence. With a single step, the heavens and earth shook and space itself collapsed. The ancient race giant that Qin Yu had transformed into raised his arm and twisted his waist. The ancient divine spear in his hand held out. Whoosh! The sound of the air being torn apart was miserable and ear-piercing. Everywhere it passed, space was obliterated, and it formed a completely straight and dark void. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through space and slammed into the area where Qing Lin was located. At this moment, the effects of time stop had disappeared. No. Qing Lin screamed in terror. In the next moment, a world-shaking rumble erupted and drowned out his voice. Who? Who? Qin Yu fell to his knees and gasped for breath. His ancient body metamorphosis rapidly faded away. His eyes were dim and his face was pale, without the least bit of blood. He had used time stop, transformed into his ancient form, summoned the ultimate killing weapon, the ancient divine spear, in just a single breath of time. Qin Yu had erupted with his greatest strength. At this time his strength had dried up and he was on the verge of collapse. But all of this was worth it. Qing Lin's aura had vanished from sight, completely erased from this world. The half-burnt yellow talisman danced in the wind. Qin Yu clenched his teeth and reached out a hand. With a loud cracking sound, his palm sank down and the ground beneath him cracked like a spider web, spreading out in all directions. As the wind blew, the yellow talisman seemed as light as a feather, but it actually felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds in his hand. With Qin Yu's current state, he found it hard to hold on to it. This talisman definitely had a great origin. As Qin Yu was thinking about how to put it away, within his soul space, the strange force field formed by the rising moon and setting sun began to fluctuate. Shwa! The yellow talisman vanished from sight. In the next moment, it appeared in Qin Yu's soul space. It slowly floated in the air for several moments before falling onto the cosmic Seacross bell. Although a small part of it had been burned away, the remaining portion still wrapped around it. The yellow talisman shined with a faint light and then fell silent. Mr. Qing Lin has died. He has died. You bastard! We will all be buried with him. No one will be able to escape. Kill them. Take their heads back, and perhaps our families will be safe. Kill them at all costs. The 6 fallen humans instantly fell into a frenzied state. Their eyes turned blood red, and they no longer cared about themselves as they crazily rushed towards Wan. Puff! Puff! The sound of sharp weapons tearing through flesh rang out. Wan came to a sudden stop. The heads of 2 fallen humans that crossed paths with him shot into the skies, blood gushing out like fountains. I can only last until now. If you cannot escape, then die here with me. We can be each other's companions. Wan grinned, his body falling backwards. Before he hit the ground, the injuries on his body were no longer suppressed. Blood sprayed out, and his body was torn apart. But even now, the smile on his face didn't fade. His head didn't fall to the ground. Qin Yu stimulated his withered body and forcefully squeezed out a bit of strength to catch him. Although doing this would worsen the condition of his body and increase the difficulty of recovery, he still didn't hesitate to do it. Do you still have any unfulfilled wishes? Wan, who only had his head left, widened his eyes. His lips moved with difficulty. My daughter, her name is... Hu Shan, Qin Yu nodded. Your daughter is in the human territory. Her name is Hu Shan, right? I understand. If there is a chance in the future, I will find her and ensure her safety for the rest of her life. Wan revealed a look of gratitude. He let out a final breath and slowly closed his eyes. Qin Yu took a drop of blood and placed the head down. He looked across at the fallen humans that were crazily rushing towards him. A cold light appeared in his eyes. He stretched out his arms and fell backwards. Puff! As if he had fallen into a pool of water. There was a light sound as Chinyu fused into it. In the next moment, his voice echoed out from all directions. The beings that you have sacrificed have already died irretrievably, but I believe that they will be satisfied. Before they die, they will drag you all into the yellow springs with them. On the platform atop the mountain peak, the countless beings that had been turned into withered corpses by the blood sacrifice all opened their eyes at this time. During the blood sacrifice process, although they had fallen unconscious, that was only to ensure that the blood sacrifice process could proceed smoothly. Their consciousness had remained awake from beginning to end, because pain could allow them to provide more strength for the blood sacrifice. Now that they awoke, their eyes revealed gratitude. They struggled to look at the fallen humans in the skies and the black-armored Obum, their eyes filled with endless hatred. "You bastards, let us all die together. Ha ha ha, no one can escape, no one can escape." Roar. This was the mountain giant's roar. It looked towards the place where Chinyu had vanished, tears of excitement filling its eyes. This was the legendary Emperor of the Hills, the one who had killed those that had been sacrificed. "My Emperor has taken revenge for me. Even if I die today, I can die in peace." As its roar fell, the withered skin of the mountain giant rapidly inflated, like a balloon. "Kacha! Kacha!" The sound of bones breaking and breaking constantly emitted from its body. The surface of its inflated skin began to bulge out. This feeling was as if there were countless giant crossbow bolts hidden within the mountain giant's body. In the next moment, bang, 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 the mountain giant instantly disintegrated. Countless thick and sharp bones burst out from its body, carrying with them an incomparably terrifying strength that caused the air to howl. Puff! One of the black-armored Obum widened his eyes and looked down at his chest that had been pierced through. He was surrounded by a bloody aura, and his tough armor and powerful body were like paper. He could not resist at all. This wasn't an isolated case. The black-armored Obums that approached the mountain giant instantly turned into hedgehogs that dripped with blood. And all of this was only the beginning of the raging tide. As the mountain giant self-detonated, the dying used the last of their life strength to release their resentment. Bang, bang, bang. At the summit of the mountain, there was a thunderous rumble. Between the tumbling clouds, thunder roared without end. 5 days later, the scouting Obum team from the Great King City had finally broken through the obstruction of the Tai Azure Gold Array and arrived at the eye of the array. Flying to the summit, all the Obums that saw the scene before them instantly froze. Their eyes widened in endless fear. Everywhere they looked was soaked in blood. Now that the blood had dried up, it had turned into a stiff and deep black and red color. And in this terrifying black and red blood-stained land, almost every inch of it had been pierced through by bone spikes. They were densely packed together, layer after layer, like a forest of bone spikes. The 6 fallen humans all had at least dozens of bones pierced through their bodies. They had ferocious expressions on their faces as they died with grievances. Before they died, they should have been flying in the air. Then they fell above the forest of bone spikes. After being injured a second time, there was almost no part of their bodies that was intact. Most of the black-armored Obums were below the forest of bone spikes. They maintained their terrified expressions, forever frozen in place. This was simply purgatory, the purgatory of the Obum race. The experienced and calm captain of the scouting team gulped. He had always been praised for his calm demeanor. His voice trembled as he said, "Reporting to the Great King City, hurry and report to the Great King City. Tell them everything that happened here." And at this time, Chinyu had already fled 10,000 miles away. He was in a place covered by the Tai Azure Gold Array and was secretly recovering from his injuries. By killing Qinglin, he had accomplished his goal of preventing the array from being broken. Now, he didn't plan on doing anything else. Once his strength was restored, he would return to 9 Nether Peak. With this buffer period, the Stronghold Master, Divine Dr. Yi, and the others should have already found a way to deal with this situation. Leader, we have just received accurate news. The 12 squads of fallen humans, led by Qing Lin, that arrived at the Great King City have all died. Buried together with them are the nearly 30,000 black-armored Obon legions that are under the control of the Aurora family. This is the detailed report. The Chaos longship rapidly moved through the turbulent flows of space. A bright light guard woke up from his slumber and knelt down to report. Mo Ming's complexion changed. "What did you say?" He lifted a hand and took the jade slip. He quickly probed it with his divine sense. After a long time, he laid down the jade slip, his expression as if he were laughing and crying at the same time. This news had already been confirmed. There was absolutely no mistake. Dead. Qing Lin had actually died. He had died like this. At this time, Mo Ming didn't feel the least bit of excitement or ecstasy from avenging his great enmity. Instead, from the depths of his heart, he felt a deep sense of weariness and confusion. For several hundred years, he had never stopped thinking about revenge. He had paid an incalculable price, and now the moment that he had imagined countless times had finally arrived. But in the end, Qing Lin had died. He had died like this. "Leader?" The bright guard probed. Mo Ming took a deep breath. "I'm fine." The bright guard hesitated for a moment. "We infiltrated Obum's territory, and our mission was to kill Qing Lin. Now that he has died, the mission has been cancelled. Commander, do we need to return now?" "No." Mo Ming waved his hand. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, "Qing Lin has been killed. With how important he is, Obum will definitely not let this matter rest. The mysterious expert hidden in Little Fragrant Mountain will encounter even greater danger. We must save him and bring him back to the human world. Leader, if we change our target, we will need the Council of Elders to reauthorize us. I will complete this. Pass down the order. The destination remains the same. Continue forward." "Yes." The bright guard stood up and quickly left. Mo Ming looked at the jade slip in his hand, lost in thought for a moment. He shook his head and suppressed his fluctuating emotions. He turned around and walked behind the desk, beginning to write an authorization request. An expert that could lay down the Tai Azure Gold Array, kill Qing Lin, and destroy the 30,000 black-armored Obum was enough to attract the attention of the Council of Elders. In addition to his own attitude, Mo Ming was confident that he could convince them. Juan, you have finally succeeded. Don't worry, I will definitely bring you back. I won't let you continue to wander outside." Mo Ming's eyes were filled with sorrow. The conference hall of the city, Lord's residence, was deathly silent. The information from the scouting team was currently placed on the round table. Everyone subconsciously averted their gazes. Occasionally, their eyes would sweep across it, causing their pupils to contract. It was as if there was a man-eating monster hidden within the jade slip. The jade slip did not eat people, but the information within it caused the Obum nobles at the round table to feel a chill from the bottom of their hearts. 12 fallen humans and 30,000 black-armored Obum. This powerful force was enough to sweep through the entire Little Fragrant Hill. But now, all of them had been quietly buried in it. No, it was not quietly. It was earth-shattering. It was extremely miserable. When they thought of the images imprinted within the jade slip, the hands and feet of the nobles turned cold. As for Elder Aurora Deli, she was undoubtedly the one who felt the coldest and coldest among them. The 30,000 black-armored Obum had been destroyed, and the family's strength had suffered a loss. But this was still acceptable. With the Aurora family's strength, as long as they had enough time, it would not be difficult for them to build a similar or even larger black armor army. What was important was that the 12 fallen humans that had died, Qing Lin was one of them. The family would definitely pay an extremely high price for this, and as the person directly in charge, he would have to bear the responsibility that he could not shirk. City Lord Sophia, I remember that you once said that you were willing to pay any price to avenge ours. His oily green eyes locked onto the beautiful Sophia. Of course, this was from the perspective of the Obum race. The coldness in Sophia's eyes froze for a moment before turning into panic. Elder Deli, I did not expect that the situation would reach this stage. But please rest assured, I am willing to use all my wealth to bear the consequences together with you. Very well, City Lord Sophia. Please remember your promise. Elder Deli stood up. His cold eyes were filled with disgust as he swept his gaze across the Obum nobles at the round table. The dignity of the Obum race does not allow any provocation. Within the Obum territory, no matter how powerful the resistance is, they will be completely annihilated. Chapter 874. Grand King City. The news had already spread throughout Little Fragrant Hill. All the Obums knew that the Aurora family, one of the most powerful families in the capital, had suffered heavy losses. Even an entire squad of the demon-like, fallen humans had been wiped out. This was simply inconceivable. It had been many years since the Obums had suffered such a great loss. They looked at Little Fragrant Hill with awe and coldness in their eyes. Awe was due to respect for the strong, even if he was a human, and coldness was because the Imperial City would not let this matter rest. This was a great loss. They had to kill all the villains and use their blood as sacrifices to the dead Obums to restore the faith of their race. Everyone was silently waiting for the wrath of the top noble Aurora family and the entire Imperial City. This wait lasted for 4 days before it finally came true. On this day, the clear skies of Grand King City darkened without warning. It was as if a giant hand had appeared, blocking out all light. It's here. Countless Obums were shaken. They looked up into the sky and saw a black that appeared beneath the sun. It was like a black hole had swallowed up all the light it released. Soon after, this black that rapidly spread, like a gaping mouth that wanted to swallow everything in the world. Roar. A roar came from the darkness, carrying with it the terrifying aura of a creature at the top of the food chain. It instantly enveloped the entire Grand King City. In the City Lord's mansion, Elder Derry's complexion changed, shock mixed with awe. It's him. Before his voice fell, his figure flickered and he vanished. The Obum, nobles standing at the back, felt their hearts tremble at the same time. In their eyes, the elder of the Aurora family was already incomparably noble. He was one of the most powerful figures in the world. Even his expression changed. Who exactly had descended today? As they thought this, no one dared to hesitate. They hurriedly soared into the skies, waiting for the Lord within the black hole to appear. The Grand King City, which was covered by the aura of a creature at the top of the food chain, fell into a deathly silence. The instinctive fear that came from the depths of their souls caused the countless Obums to tremble. They could only lie limply on the ground, twitching. Bang! A massive claw stretched out from the darkness, pressing down on the edge of the black hole. It emitted a jarring sound like metal striking metal. Panting heavily, a black dragon had emerged. It was covered in dense black scales, and a pair of red eyes flashed with coldness and ruthlessness. A dragon. It had a pair of thick and powerful hind legs, and its massive bat-like wings flapped in the air, causing spatial ripples to spread out. Its cold gaze swept across the city on the ground, and the massive dragon roared towards the sky. Elder Derry's body trembled, and fear appeared on his face. Fortunately, his cultivation was high, so he could barely maintain his composure. However, the Obum nobles behind him all exclaimed in shock. Their faces were pale and bloodless, and they almost fell from the sky. The Bat-Winged Dragon was one of the dragon clans with a special bloodline. It had once ruled the entire world and stood at the peak of the food chain. Before their rule was overthrown, the Obum race was only one of the Bat-Winged Dragon's rations. Their status was even lower than that of the humans in their eyes. Even though the Bat-Winged Dragon's rule had been overthrown, The fear imprinted in the bloodline of the bat-winged dragon still hadn't dissipated. It was the creature that Obum feared the most. But now, this incomparably powerful and terrifying giant dragon that could even be called a king among the giant bat-winged dragons had a completely dark gold throne that was only a few feet long. It was not even a third of the size of a giant bat-winged dragon scale. A snow-white Obum lay on the dark golden throne. He had a pair of wings that were exactly the same as the bat-winged dragons, except that they were countless times smaller. At this moment, he slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, space seemed to freeze, and an incomparably terrifying pressure descended from the heavens. It wasn't a true suppression of power, but an instinctive release of the aura of the soul. If one hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it at all. This body that was even smaller than an ordinary Obum hid such terrifying power. It was like a sealed monster that could tear apart its disguise at any time and destroy everything in its line of sight. Ah! Amidst the exclamations, the group of Obum nobles were like startled hens. They lost control of the power in their bodies, screaming as they fell to the ground. Elder Bolet was dripping with sweat. He swallowed with difficulty, lowered his proud head, and said in a trembling voice, "Elder of the Aurora family greets the great Dragon Lord." It's him. It really is him. Even though he had already guessed it, after seeing it for himself, he still felt disbelief, awe, and fear that came from the bottom of his heart. In fact, Elder Bolet didn't even dare to mention his name in front of him, because he didn't have the qualifications to be remembered. The bat-winged dragon was the natural nemesis of the Obum race. Their aura was like the most terrifying poison in the world. As long as an Obum breathed it into their body, they would instantly collapse to the ground, losing 90% of their strength. They wouldn't be able to resist at all. But the Dragon Lord was an exception. Or, to be more precise, he was a terrifying freak, because he could actually devour dragons. No one knew how the Dragon Lord was able to do this. But the dragon bat wings that grew from his back were the best evidence. He had indeed devoured one or more bat-winged WYRMs before. And what truly earned him the title of WYRM Lord was the bat-winged WYRM King that he was currently sitting on. Powerful and violent as it was, it could only obediently allow the Dragon Lord to order it around. In the Obum race, the Dragon Lord status was extraordinary. He could even be seen as the spiritual leader of the Obum race. To a certain extent, he could be compared to the Obum Emperor who wielded supreme power in the imperial city. Such a great existence had actually descended upon King City. Whether it was Elder Bolet, who was sweating profusely, or the many Obum nobles who had fallen to the ground in a sorry state, everyone knew that things seemed to be developing in a direction that was out of their control. The upcoming war will be under my full control. The Dragon Lord spoke slowly. Unlike his skinny body, the Dragon Lord's voice was dignified, solemn, and filled with the thick aura of time. Every word carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. Elder Bolet's pupils contracted violently, and his back was instantly drenched in cold sweat. He noticed the Dragon Lord's tone. War. It was actually war. Damn it, what was going on? He didn't dare to think too much and said respectfully, "Yes, everything will follow your will." Chapter 875. Chinyu was awakened by a horrifying feeling. He opened his eyes and sweat gushed out, instantly soaking his black robes. In the next moment, a severe pain erupted from his chest without warning. It was like an invisible knife had ruthlessly pierced through his flesh and blood. Chinyu tensed his back and looked up. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. It was like the space around him had been isolated from the outside world. The pain continued without end. From his chest, as the starting point, it spread to his limbs and bones. Then, without warning, there was a light cracking sound that came from Chinyu's chest. This was the sound of his flesh and blood and bones cracking apart. A thin line of blood appeared on the surface of his chest. Then it split apart and expanded outwards, turning into a terrifying wound that stretched from his throat to his heart. Bang, bang. Two beating hearts were exposed to the air. They rapidly contracted and expanded in a restless manner. The blood vessels that wrapped around them thickened, as if they were water pipes that were withstanding a tremendous pressure, ready to burst at any moment. The wound continued to widen, and his heart became increasingly violent. It wildly beat, making it hard for Chinyu to withstand it. His field of vision darkened, and he suddenly realized that if he didn't do anything soon, his heart would break apart. Space was imprisoned. Chinyu was like a small insect imprisoned in amber. He could only passively withstand the horrifying strength that was about to destroy him. He couldn't resist, he was powerless to resist. Like this, he could only stare helplessly on as death arrived. After a brief moment of anger and panic, Chinyu seemed to resonate with a will that transcended space and time. It came from the entire ancient race. For the endless years, they had maintained this unwillingness and anger. It was a kind of strength that stood between the heavens and earth, a strength that would not fall even in death. Thus, a wild anger surged out from Chinyu's mind. It was like tumbling magma, able to swallow everything. Chinyu gripped his fists. Blue veins bulged out from his neck, making him look like giant and fierce pythons. He opened his mouth and finally roared. Roar. This roar came not just from Chinyu, but from the unyielding will of the entire ancient race, one that was branded into their bloodline. Bang! The invisible imprisonment in the air shattered into pieces with this roar. Chinyu stood up, his eyes icy cold as he looked forwards. Just now, in the instant he broke free of the imprisonment, he had a faint feeling that allowed him to lock onto the source of this terrifying power. It was the great King City. At the same time, in the King City Lord's mansion, in the huge hall, the three Obum holy priests simultaneously spat out a mouthful of blood. The surface of their bodies cracked inch by inch, like a dried-up river under the scorching sun. Their life force was quickly dissipating. The divine consecrators had exhausted the last of their strength, leaving behind only a speck of light before dying. This dot of light was the only thing they could preserve from the backlash. It was the general location of the other party. The dragon lord expressionlessly stood up. His gaze didn't linger on the three dead divine priests. He took a step forward and disappeared. In the next moment, a deafening dragon roar reverberated throughout the entire great King City. The bat-winged dragon king soared into the sky and caught the giant dragon overlord that had appeared out of nowhere. Bang! As the dragon's wings fiercely slammed down, a large area of space fluctuated. The bat-winged dragon was like a sharp arrow released from a bow, whistling through the air towards the ends of the world. There was a huge mountain range that stretched as far as the eye could see. Who? Chinyu gasped for breath. Although the terrifying wound on his chest had already healed, the intense pain still hadn't faded away. It was like even though his flesh and blood had regenerated, the wound was still there, waiting for the right opportunity to tear it apart once more. What sort of method was this? Chinyu frowned. It shouldn't be a curse. Otherwise, the mark left on his body from the Eye of Curse would have definitely been triggered. If that were true, then things would truly be troublesome. Just as he rejoiced, Chinyu's body stiffened. He looked up into the distance, his eyes seeming to penetrate through the stone walls and fall into the distance. This feeling of being locked onto, it was like a burning star was crazily falling towards him at a terrifying speed. Chinyu's soul instinctively screamed out. Great fear covered his mind. He believed without hesitation that if he couldn't avoid it and was struck, he would instantly turn to ashes. With a heavy step, there was a loud rumbling sound as the earth collapsed and countless rocks flew into the air. Chinyu was like a cannonball as he smashed into the mountain. He was like a giant pangolin as he pierced through the entire mountain. Without pausing, Chinyu desperately ran away. Facing that terrifying aura, he couldn't even form any thoughts of resisting it. Run, run, run. Chinyu erupted with his fastest speed, but the area covered by falling star was far too great. So great that he couldn't escape in a short period of time even if he risked his life. Closer, even closer. Qin Yu couldn't help but look back. In the distance, the skies were violently twisting, as if a terrifying crossbow were exploding towards him. As it flew, it stirred up the surrounding space, setting off massive fluctuations like raging waves. With just a glance, Qin Yu's heart wildly shrank. Without any reason, he knew that this enemy's goal was him. Was everything that happened just now just to lock onto his position? Qin Yu roared out from the depths of his throat. He came to a sudden stop, his heart wildly beating in his chest. His bones emitted explosive crackling sounds as he disregarded his injuries and forcefully activated his ancient race body metamorphosis. Since he couldn't escape, he might as well risk his life. Perhaps he might have a chance at survival. Rumble, rumble. Space rumbled and shattered, interrupting Qin Yu's movements. He watched as a strange-looking ship forcefully broke through space and arrived, blocking him from the terrifying aura that was howling towards him. The ship trembled. Nodes lit up all over its surface. A tube stretched out from the bow of the ship, and in the next moment it erupted with a terrifying beam of light. At this moment, the world fell deathly silent. All sound and fluctuations were covered up and dispersed. Beneath this terrifying strike, everything became a meaningless blank space. Without the slightest pause, the beam of light collided with a distant body, and a terrifying shockwave instantly erupted. Space shattered inch by inch, turning into a pitch-black void. It was as if an incomparably large black disk had suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. Who? Strong winds rushed towards him, carrying with them a suffocating strength. Qin Yu lifted his arms to block. Kacha-kacha! The sounds of bones breaking filled the air as he was sent flying backwards, tumbling backwards. He crashed into the ground, forming a giant pit. Qin Yu spat out a mouthful of blood. He stood up without hesitation and continued to flee. He didn't know the origin of this ship, nor did he want to know. Right now, his only thought was to leave this place as quickly as possible. This world had refreshed Qin Yu's senses once more. Although it wasn't as terrifying as he felt at the start, it wasn't a place where he could sit back and relax with his cultivation. No, it was more accurate to say that if he were to directly face the most powerful existence in this world, he would be killed in a single encounter. Moreover, Qin Yu didn't dare to confirm whether or not what he was witnessing now represented the most powerful life form in this world. How interesting. I haven't even gone to look for you, yet you actually delivered yourselves to my doorstep. Then I won't be polite. This place is a beautiful place. Those from the punishment firmament, you can stay here forever. A deep and low laughter echoed in his ears. Qin Yu paused. Punishment firmament? He thought of one who had died. He looked down at the ring of rebirth on his finger. After a moment of hesitation, he left at an even faster speed. Within the Chaos longboat, the bright light guards looked into the distance. As they saw the fleeing figure, a cold and mocking light shined in their eyes. Indeed, the humans of Obums we've had their spines broken. They had lost the courage and bravery to fight for their lives, and had devolved into cowards that only knew how to flee and reproduce. In order to save such a person, their leader had given up his advantage of concealment and directly confronted the dragon overlord. This wasn't worth it at all, but they would only think of this in their hearts. They would never say it out loud. The commander had already used his own actions to obtain the respect of everyone in the Bright Light Guard. No matter what he wanted to do, they would obey without hesitation. Mo Ming looked away. His gaze passed through the Chaos longboat and fell onto the bat-winged dragon. He slowly said, "In this battle, I will stand with you all." Rumble, rumble. Heaven-shaking explosions erupted deep within Little Fragrant Mountain, stirring up winds and clouds. Thick black clouds gathered in the void, and trillions of thunderstorms descended. A day later, news spread out. A super expert of the Obum race, the Dragon Overlord, was engaged in a fierce frontal battle with the human race's punishment firmament. Everything for thousands of miles around was turned into ruins, and tens of millions of lives were buried within. In the end, victory and defeat were not decided. The humans' chaos longboat was broken. The dragon overlord wept blood and fled, and the bat-winged dragon had one of its wings broken. The Obum race was in an uproar. City Lord Mansion. Sophia smashed apart her room. She could see everything within. Even in the eyes of humans, her face, which could be considered cute, was now completely twisted. This damned world, and even more damned human punishment firmament. Because of their interference, the situation had fallen into a stalemate once more. Although she didn't doubt that the Obum race would be able to obtain the final victory, Sophia was even more certain that she didn't have much time left. With the strength of her current body, suppressing the backlash from the eye of the curse was an incomparably difficult task. If she couldn't ask the powerhouses of her family to disperse it before it erupted, there would be dreadful consequences. She could not continue to wait. She had to do something. She had to find that woman from the Dongzhou family in the shortest time possible. The next day, an announcement stamped with the city lord's seal spread through the entire grand capital city and its subordinate territories at an astonishing speed. Any human Obum who was able to find and kill the primordial Unity Azure Gold Array in Little Fragrant Mountain would obtain the qualifications to marry City Lord Sophia and automatically inherit the position of City Lord. With a single leap, they would become an absolutely noble existence amongst the Obum race. Thus, after a short period of silence, the entire grand capital city and its subordinate territories began to boil.